The story starts where the Demon King was dead. Roland, the legendary assassin with the thin presence skill, had finished the job alone. He didn't want fame or power, he wanted a normal life. After reporting to King Randolph, Roland refused all rewards except for a modest sum of money and the chance to live as an ordinary person. He left the capital with Layla, the former Demon King, who now lived as a black cat wearing a magical collar that suppressed her power. They settled in the quiet town of Lottie. Roland's idea of a normal life meant getting a job. He applied for a staff position at the local Adventurers Guild. During the interview, the branch manager, Iris, was skeptical of his lack of experience. To prove his one special skill, Roland used his near-invisible speed to steal and then return her underwear without her even noticing. Shocked and embarrassed, Iris realized his terrifying potential and hired him on the spot. On his first day, Roland met Miria, a friendly receptionist, and Morley, a former C-rank adventurer who looked down on him. Morley tried to slack off during a quest inspection, but Roland immediately spotted that a batch of medicinal herbs was actually half-weeds. When Roland called him out, Morley was humiliated and left in a rage. Later, during lunch, a group of thugs, friends of Morley, tried to jump Roland to get revenge. Roland didn't want to cause a scene, so he used his skills to make them look like they were just clumsy. One thug broke his hand hitting Roland's head, and the others suddenly fainted. He cornered the last female adventurer in an alley, and instead of fighting, he charmed her into silence. Roland returned to the guild, determined to keep his past a secret and master the art of being average. After the lunch break, Roland continued his training under Miria at the Adventurers Guild. She explained that most newcomers start at the reception desk. During the training, the branch manager, Iris, stopped by. Miria enthusiastically praised Roland for being a quick learner, which seemed to surprise the usually strict Iris. Roland couldn't help but find her professional demeanor funny, considering he had secretly swapped her underwear during his interview. When Roland casually teased her about her lingerie, Iris turned bright red and hurried away, leaving the other staff wondering how a new guy could rattle their boss so easily. Later, Miria demonstrated how to handle adventurers by assisting a scruffy man looking for a quest. Roland watched as she checked the man's adventurer ID and prepared to give him a D-rank mission. However, Roland noticed a tiny trace of magic on the ID card and realized it was a fake. Miria was shocked, as official IDs are made of magic-resistant material. Roland explained that the man had been acting nervous, and since criminals are banned from becoming adventurers, people often use fakes to hide their identity. When the man became aggressive and threatened Miria, their co-worker Morley tried to stay out of it, telling Miria to just apologize. Roland stepped in and took the fake ID. To prove it was a forgery, he set it on fire with a small flame. The card burned instantly, proving it wasn't made of the proper material. The man accidentally blurted out that he had paid a lot of money for the fake, then tried to run away. Roland quickly jumped over the counter and pinned him to the floor, earning a round of applause from the guild. Hold up. Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, I'm loving it. I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. With the weekend approaching, Miria turned down Morley's dinner invitation and instead asked Roland where he lived. When he mentioned he was staying at an inn, she was shocked because it was too expensive for a regular worker. She told him that normal people live in houses near their workplace. Eager to master being normal, Roland agreed to let Miria show him some vacant houses the next day. The following day, Roland and Layla, in her cat form, met Miria. After rejecting a nice house in a busy neighborhood because it wasn't quiet enough, they visited an old, abandoned house on the edge of town. The place was overgrown and isolated, which Layla liked. However, Roland sensed a dark presence inside. He told Miria to wait outside and entered with Layla. They found a monster called a dark plasma, a ghost-like creature that feeds on negative energy. Not wanting to damage his potential new home with big spells, Roland used a high-level technique called magic armor, coating his arm in pure energy and punching a hole straight through the monster, ending it instantly. After clearing the house, Roland told Miria he would take the place. Miria offered to bring over some lunch while Roland and Layla cleaned. Once Miria left, Roland let Layla return to her human form to help. When Miria returned with food, Roland introduced Layla as a friend he met during his travel. Despite Layla's arrogant attitude, the two girls ended up bickering like friends while they finished cleaning the house. That evening, Miria invited Roland to her home for dinner. He met her parents and experienced the warmth of a normal family for the first time. Her father explained that a normal life involves working, coming home to a family, and eventually raising children. Roland took these words to heart, realizing this was exactly the kind of life he wanted to achieve. Back at work, Roland took his turn at the service window. He assisted an adventurer named Neil, a D-rank archer. Neil wanted a high-level hunt, so Roland suggested a quest to deal with a killer falcon. However, Roland worried the bird might be too strong for Neil. After checking in with Iris, Roland secretly followed Neil to the hunt. He watched as Neil struggled against the fast bird. Roland, hiding his identity by removing his glasses, stepped out and gave Neil some tactical advice. Wait for the bird to charge before shooting. Neil took the advice, found his courage, and successfully took down the monster. When Neil later returned to the guild to claim his reward, he quietly thanked Roland, sensing the clerk had been the one who helped him. A few days later, Iris gave Roland a new task: find a young E-rank adventurer who had gone missing in the forest. Miria insisted on coming along since she was the one who had given the boy the quest. Layla tagged along as a cat. Roland used his advanced tracking skills to lead them to a cave. Sensing a dangerous beast inside, he told Miria to wait outside. Inside the cave, Roland encountered a massive gray bear. The bear was aggressive because it was protecting its cub. Roland didn't want to kill it, so he simply disarmed the beast by breaking its claws and teeth with his bare hands, then knocked it unconscious with a swift strike. He found the missing boy at the back of the cave, weakened but alive. Roland carried the boy out and returned him to the guild. When the staff found out Roland had fended off a gray bear, a monster usually reserved for high-ranking adventurers, to save the kid, he was treated like a hero. Even though he was just trying to be average, Roland realized that helping people as a regular worker felt pretty good. Roland continued his work at the guild, mostly handling paperwork and assisting with the reception desk. One day, Miria struggled to fill a 4-person party for a C-rank quest to defend a nearby village from monsters. Neil, the archer Roland had previously helped, was already part of the group and begged Roland to join them as the final member. Although Roland wanted to stay low profile, the branch manager Iris authorized it, noting that Roland had already proven himself by taking down a gray bear. Roland joined the party, which included a spearman and a priest. Both were skeptical of Roland since he carried no weapons, but Neil treated him with total respect, even calling him master. As they approached Lassen village, Roland noticed smoke and sensed trouble. They were soon confronted by a red wolf, a fast and powerful monster. When the spearman panicked and tried to flee, Roland grabbed him, calmed him down, and gave him specific tactical instructions on how to hold his ground. Following Roland's lead, the party worked together. Neil landed precise shots and the spearman delivered the finishing blow. The group was amazed by Roland's calm leadership. Upon reaching the village, they found it on fire. While the others helped the villagers put out the flames, Roland tracked the culprit, a salamander. He found the beast and realized it wasn't a wild animal but a trained one. The salamander attacked with fire, but Roland moved so fast he simply swiped the flames away with his bare hand. He ended the creature quickly by using its own sharp claw against it and a single powerful punch. Roland sensed someone watching from the woods and discovered the true villain, a high-ranking A-rank adventurer who used trained monsters to attack villages. The man's goal was to lure out other adventurers to see if they were strong enough to join his crew. He showed zero remorse for the lives destroyed, dismissively calling the villagers weak and claiming his own growth was more important. Roland, disgusted by someone who would steal the normal lives of others for sport, dropped his glasses and his average persona. He moved with such lethal speed that the man didn't even realize he had been struck until he was already dying. The next day, Roland returned to the guild. The party members praised him to Miria, credited him with saving their lives, and mentioned the salamander. This caused a stir, as a salamander was far above a C-rank threat. Iris later thanked Roland privately, but suspected there was more to the disappearance of the rogue A-rank adventurer than Roland was letting on. She tried to invite him to a fancy dinner as a reward, but Roland turned her down to go home to Layla. Back at his house, Roland shared a quiet evening with Layla. He admitted that for the first time, he had killed someone out of his own choice rather than a mission. Layla noted that he was beginning to separate Roland the person from Roland the assassin. They shared a quiet, intimate moment, with Roland realizing that being with her gave him a sense of warmth he never had before. In the following weeks, Roland's reputation at the guild grew. Adventurers began specifically seeking him out for advice because his quest recommendations had a near-perfect success rate. He even helped Neil's younger, arrogant associates learn some humility. Even though Iris and Miria kept trying to get more of his attention, Roland remained focused on his simple routine, working his shift, heading home to Layla's home-cooked meals, and enjoying the quiet, normal life he had worked so hard to find. Walking home, Roland found a young girl in rags huddled in an alley. Seeing the slave mark on her neck, he realized she was an abandoned or runaway slave. He gave her some bread, and seeing she was too weak to move, carried her home. Layla was annoyed by the extra work but helped Roland bathe the girl and settle her in. Roland asked Layla if there was a way to break a slave contract. Layla explained that while human magic couldn't do it, she knew a high-level demon spell called Dispel. She taught Roland the theory, assuming a human couldn't pull it off without a magic circle. To her shock, Roland performed it perfectly on his first try, shattering the slave mark instantly. Layla realized Roland's magic talent was as terrifying as his assassination skills. The next morning, the girl woke up terrified. Roland calmed her down and introduced himself as a guild worker. The girl couldn't remember her name, likely because she was never given one. To help her open up, Roland turned Layla into a cat. The girl immediately cheered up, hugging the talking kitty. Roland told the girl to look after the cat while he went to work. Layla, wanting to annoy Roland, led the girl to the Adventurers Guild later that day. The staff was charmed by the cute child, but the arrogant Morley complained about the workplace becoming a daycare. Iris stepped in and shut him down, letting the girl stay in the reception room. Roland decided he couldn't keep her forever. He would train her to be an adventurer so she could survive on her own. Layla named the girl Mary, which meant blue sky. Roland began a brutal training regime for her, waking her up before dawn for mountain runs and combat drills. Under his guidance, Mary's skills improved rapidly. One night, Roland sensed a professional assassin approaching his house. He stepped outside and confronted the man, who was using a high-level stealth skill. Roland mocked his amateur technique and moved so fast the assassin didn't even see him get behind him. After a quick interrogation, Roland ended the threat, realizing the man was likely sent by someone powerful. A few weeks later, Mary was ready for her adventurer exam. Roland gave her a custom short sword as a gift. The examiner turned out to be Morley, who planned to humiliate the brat to impress Layla. Instead, Mary used a move she called backslash, repeatedly disappearing from Morley's sight and hitting him where it hurt. Morley surrendered in tears, and Mary officially became an F-rank adventurer. The celebration was cut short the next day when 5 knights from the local lord, Baron Balder, marched into the guild to take Mary back. It turned out Mary was Alias, a girl the lord was obsessed with. When the knights threatened Layla and Mary with swords, Roland stepped in. He punched the lead knight so hard his helmet shattered, sending him flying across the room. Baron Balder arrived personally, demanding the girl and even insulting Layla. Roland took off his glasses, and the Baron's face went pale with terror. Years ago, Balder had hired Roland to assassinate his own brother so he could inherit the title. Roland whispered a reminder of this secret into his ear, promising to stay quiet only if the Baron left them alone. Terrified, the Lord immediately bowed and apologized, telling his shocked knights that Mary was free to stay. Though the guild staff was stunned to see a lowly clerk make a lord grovel, Roland simply went back to his desk, focused on maintaining his normal life. After dealing with Baron Balder, Roland learned that the girl he named Mary was actually Princess Alias of the fallen Badenhark Duchy. She had been separated from her family during the Demon King's invasion and ended up in the hands of slave traders after losing her memory from the trauma. Roland realized that despite her royal blood, Mary had found a true home with him and Layla. That night, Roland discussed the situation with Layla. They both felt a strange sadness at the thought of losing her, but they agreed that if her family was still out there, she deserved to know. Roland decided to use his connection with King Randolph to find her relatives. As they sat together, Layla clung to Roland's arm, both of them feeling a deep, quiet bond they couldn't quite explain. Meanwhile, Mary's memories began to return. She remembered her parents and siblings in the castle, but she also remembered the horror of their deaths. However, the warmth she felt from Roland and Layla gave her the strength to face those memories. One night, she crept into Roland's bed just to feel safe. Layla soon joined them, and though she acted annoyed, the three of them shared a warm, cramped moment of genuine affection. Roland told them he had to leave for 2 days for work, leaving Mary in Layla's care. Roland's work was sneaking into King Randolph's private chambers in the middle of the night. After nearly giving the king a heart attack, Roland asked about the Badenhark royalty. The king revealed that Mary's mother, Queen Leti, was alive and working to rebuild her nation under his protection. Roland asked the king to inform her that her daughter was safe and gave him his address. In exchange for this favor, the king asked Roland to deal with his daughter, the hero Almeria, who had been depressed since the war ended. 2 days later, a royal carriage arrived at Roland's house. Queen Leti stepped out and was reunited with Mary. The girl's memories were fully back, and she collapsed into her mother's arms, crying for the first time like a normal child. As they prepared to leave, Mary thanked Roland and Layla, telling them that the time she spent with them was the happiest of her life. She promised to write and even joked about marrying Roland one day, finally leaving with a smile. After Mary left, the house felt empty. Roland realized the feeling in his chest was loneliness, something he had never understood as an assassin. At the guild, everyone was curious about the lowly clerk who seemed to have connections to royalty, but Roland kept his head down. Iris, the branch manager, even praised him, saying he acted more like a hero than an assassin. Roland soon noticed a young boy named Zeppet hanging around the guild. Zeppet had failed his adventurer exam and was desperate to pass so he could support his mother. His skill was penetration, which he thought was useless for a swordsman. Roland took the boy to a vacant lot and showed him that his skill was perfect for a different tool, a shovel. With his skill, Zeppet could dig through solid earth like butter. Roland explained that being an adventurer isn't just about fighting. Utility skills are highly valuable for scouting and building camps. Encouraged, Zeppet took Roland's advice to take the exam in a different town and soon returned with his adventure plate, grateful for the life-changing tip. Just as things were settling down, the guild was thrown into a panic when the king's knights arrived, followed by the hero Almeria herself. She had come looking for Roland. He tried to hide behind his glasses and act like a stranger, but she spotted him instantly. Almeria announced she wanted to become an adventurer at this specific branch just to be near him. It turned out Roland had tried to fix her depression weeks earlier by using a high-level illusion spell to make her believe he was dead, thinking it would let her move on. He even gave her a goodbye kiss while she was under the spell. However, the spell had been broken by a priest, and now Almeria was more obsessed with him than ever. When Almeria acted bossy toward Iris, Roland snapped at her, making the legendary hero apologize and bow to his boss. To settle the matter of her registration, Roland challenged her to a test. They went outside, surrounded by a massive crowd. Roland didn't even draw a weapon. He simply released a tiny fraction of his killing intent. The pressure was so intense that Almeria couldn't even move. She realized that despite her hero status, Roland was still worlds ahead of her. She collapsed, admitting she had died 20 times in her mind just from his gaze. Roland failed her on the spot, but Almeria just smiled, promising to keep coming back until he accepted her. Despite his best efforts to be average, Roland realized his normal life was only getting more complicated. Roland noticed a new adventurer at his window named EmpireHe, a 19-year-old E-rank warrior. She wanted to join a party for a bigger quest, so Roland searched the files and found a D-rank escort mission for a merchant. The party already had 2 F-rank members, Atro and Uno. Normally, a group of low-rankers would fail such a mission, but Roland saw potential in them. He officially formed the party and introduced them to each other. The 3 adventurers were nervous about their lack of strength, so Roland took them to a field outside town for training. He bluntly told them they were weak and useless, which hurt their pride. To prove his point, he summoned 4 small shadow creatures called shadows, a spell Layla had taught him. The shadows easily toyed with the trio, even pulling down Ivari's underwear to show how easily they could be distracted. Roland warned them that in the real world, monsters and bandits wouldn't wait for them to be ready. Chastened, the 3 admitted their weakness and agreed to follow his instructions. Roland gave them specific gear: a dagger for the small and agile Uno, and a massive heavy shield for the large Atro. He trained them to use their specific skills in sync. Uno used his instant edge to double his speed for short bursts, while Atro used hardening to turn his shield into an unbreakable wall. Ivari acted as the leader and healer. After a day of intense practice against the shadows, they looked like real warriors. The next day, the mission began. Roland secretly attached a shadow to the merchant's wagon so he could monitor them from the guild. When 6 bandits attacked, the trio executed Roland's plan perfectly. Uno rushed into the middle of the bandits, using his speed to dodge and counterattack with his dagger. Atro followed up with a shield charge, breaking the bandits' bones and spirits. Ivari stayed back, healing injuries instantly and finishing off anyone who tried to flank them. The merchant was amazed at their efficiency, and Roland, satisfied with their teamwork, cut the magical link. Later that day, Iris announced that Roland would now be the exclusive examiner for all new adventure applicants. She showed the staff data proving that every adventurer Roland had passed was exceptionally successful, with some even reaching C rank in just 2 months. The other staff members were stunned, realizing Roland wasn't just a clerk. He was a master at identifying and nurturing talent. Roland downplayed it, saying he just taught them to recognize their own strengths, but the guild staff now looked at him with newfound respect. To celebrate his new position, Miria and Iris invited themselves over to Roland's house for a party. Iris arrived dressed up and wearing perfume, claiming it was normal to look nice for a celebration. Inside, Layla in human form, and Miria ended up bickering in the kitchen over who was the better cook. The night turned into a lively dinner where the 3 women bonded and competed for Roland's attention. After Layla and Miria passed out from drinking too much wine, Iris stayed up with Roland. She kissed him, and the 2 spent the rest of the night talking intimately. The next day, Roland interviewed a new applicant named Carolina. She was a clumsy 15-year-old with very low magic and a seemingly useless poison resistance skill. She didn't want to fight, she wanted to be a pharmacist. While other guilds had rejected her, Roland realized her skill made her perfect for exploring the Elen-Fatine wetlands, a toxic area filled with rare medicinal plants that other adventurers couldn't reach. He passed her on the condition that she travel there to help with the research. Years later, Carolina would become a world-famous pharmacist adventurer, all because Roland saw the value in her weak skill. Soon after, Layla fell ill with a mysterious fever. Roland stayed home to care for her, but while he was out briefly with Miria to get supplies, Layla disappeared. Sensing a non-human presence, Roland tracked a trail of magical dust into the woods. He confronted a dark elf named Risei, a high-ranking commander from the Demon King's army who had come to rescue Layla. Risei, arrogant and hateful toward humans, attacked Roland with powerful shadow magic. Roland easily dodged her shadow edges and countered by summoning 12 of his own shadow creatures. Risei was shocked that a human could control so many shadows, a feat usually reserved for the Demon King. Roland mocked her, saying his skill surpassed hers. When she lost her focus, Roland ended the fight with a powerful flick to her forehead, sending her flying into a tree. To keep her from causing more trouble, he used a high-level illusion spell called Real Nightmare, brainwashing the elite commander into believing she was a loyal dog. The once-proud dark elf began barking and wagging her tail, completely submissive to her new master. Roland found Layla sleeping in the bushes and quickly woke her up. She explained that her subordinate, Risay, had used a sleep spell on her to bring her to the woods. Roland broke the illusion spell he had placed on Risay, who immediately tried to attack him until Layla stopped her, introducing Roland as her partner. Risay was shocked that the powerful Demon King had been tamed by a human, especially when Layla admitted she had surrendered to Roland within 10 minutes of their first fight. Risay revealed her true intention. After the war, she had stayed behind to search for Layla, suspecting the body left in the castle was a fake because it lacked a specific birthmark on the rear. While Risay remained loyal, a hardline faction of the demon army led by General Cornelius was planning to retake the old castle and restart the war, using the revenge for the Demon King as an excuse. Layla realized her supposed death was being used to fuel more violence. Determined to stop the bloodshed and protect the normal life she had come to love, Layla decided to confront the rebel. Roland agreed to help, promising to take on entire armies if necessary to protect her. They learned the rebels were gathered on a nearby island. Since Risay's teleportation gate was broken, Roland easily learned the high-level gate magic from Layla on the spot, shocking Risay with his natural talent. The trio teleported to the island, arriving just as Cornelius was giving a speech to thousands of soldiers. Layla stepped forward to reveal she was alive and ordered them to return to the demon realm. However, Cornelius, wanting power more than his queen, claimed she was an imposter because she lacked magic power. The crowd turned hostile, but Layla kept her cool. She bluffed, claiming she had sacrificed her magic to master a one-hit kill skill. She looked at Roland, who immediately understood the plan. Using his thin presence skill, Roland moved through the crowd at invisible speeds and took down Cornelius instantly, making it look like Layla had killed him with a single word. Terrified by this display of instant death, the rebel army surrendered and agreed to return home. With the threat over, Layla visited a demon doctor on the island for her lingering fever. She made Roland wait outside, later emerging extremely embarrassed. She eventually confessed the truth. Her illness wasn't a deadly disease or a pregnancy, which she had secretly feared and hoped for, but actually a severe case of food poisoning from her own experimental cooking. Roland was relieved she was okay, though he teased her for being a clumsy demon king who almost killed herself with her own dinner. Before they left, Risay decided to stay in the human world to keep an eye on things. She dropped her dark elf persona, revealing she was actually a normal green-haired elf who had dyed her skin and hair to look tougher in the demon army. Roland set up a permanent teleportation gate between his house and the island so they could visit the doctor or Risay whenever needed. Having saved the world from a second war, Roland and Layla returned to their quiet home, ready to continue their journey toward a perfectly normal life together. Roland discussed his feelings with Miria at the guild, describing the warmth he felt when Layla mentioned wanting children. Miria excitedly told him that what he was feeling was love, leaving Roland to reflect on this new emotion. Later, Roland and Miria sorted through quest requests. They found one from a fruit orchard owner complaining about someone ruining his harvest. Roland took the job and headed out on horseback with Layla, who was in her cat form. Layla was furious about the thief because she loved the unatsu citrus fruit grown there and feared her favorite pies would disappear if the orchard failed. On the way, they encountered several giant baboons. Roland eliminated them instantly, turning them into piles of meat before Layla could even count them. They arrived at the home of the client, Hogan, and his wife. While Layla happily snacked on some fruit offered by the wife, Hogan explained that a large man with 30 cm footprints and a habit of leaving drool behind was raiding the trees. Roland realized the thief was actually the baboons he had just killed. He showed the bodies to the couple, who confirmed the creatures matched the description of the intruder. However, Roland knew that if one group of baboons found food, others would follow. He traveled to a nearby forest to find the root cause. He discovered that the forest was suffering from a food shortage because a massive water monster, a plesiosaur, had moved in and was eating everything, including the baboon. Layla tried to use her authority as the Demon King to order the beast to leave, but the monster just laughed at her. Annoyed, Roland stepped in. When the plesiosaur attacked with its long neck, Roland used a fallen tree to impale it and finished it off with a small knife. Roland returned to the orchard and gave Hogan the plesiosaur's skin. He explained that the scent of a high-level monster would act as a natural repellent to keep other creatures away. Hogan was incredibly grateful, noting that most guild workers wouldn't go to such lengths. Back at the guild, Miria was shocked that Roland had taken down an S-rank threat just to settle a simple dispute. When word got out, every adventurer in the building rushed to the forest to scavenge the valuable monster parts. Later, the branch manager, Iris, called Roland into her office. Following Miria's advice to apologize quickly to avoid a long lecture, Roland bowed and said sorry for going off script. The tactic worked, and a flustered Iris ended up praising him instead, noting that his dedication built trust with the community. However, Roland noticed her skirt was positioned poorly, revealing her underwear again. When he pointed it out, she shrieked in embarrassment, and for the next few days she strictly wore pants to work. A few days later, Roland was assigned to shadow Morley, a veteran adventure-return-clerk, to learn about setting quest ranks. Morley acted arrogant, trying to show off his pro skills. They visited a tool shop where the owner needed a new whetstone. Morley tried to set it as a bottom-tier F-rank errand with a tiny reward. Roland stepped in and suggested a more specific quest, hiring an adventurer to go to a specialized shop Roland knew, with a higher reward that incentivized the adventurer to negotiate a better price. The shop owner loved the idea. When Morley asked how Roland knew so much about weapons, Roland joked that he used to be an assassin. Morley laughed, thinking it was a great joke. Soon after, a senior worker named Shane begged Roland to join a group blind date. Roland eventually agreed and met with 3 other male co-workers and 4 women, including a maid, a baker, and 2 adventurers. During the dinner, Roland subtly helped his co-workers connect with their dates by steering the conversation toward their strengths. When Morley got drunk and started harassing a well-endowed female swordswoman named Diana, Roland quietly poked a pressure point on Morley's side, knocking him out instantly so the night could continue in peace. As the night ended, the group split up. A shy mage named Maria thanked Roland and asked if she could specifically request him at the guild in the future. Meanwhile, Roland helped the heavily drunk Diana back to a quiet watermill where she stayed. Diana, who lived by the philosophy that adventurers could die any day and shouldn't have regrets, pulled Roland inside and kissed him. After a private night together, the next morning found Morley waking up alone at the restaurant, confused and wondering why his dream of meeting a beautiful woman had ended so abruptly. Iris, the branch manager, summoned Roland to her office for a serious matter. King Randolph had requested Roland personally to guard Princess Almeria during her meeting with the first prince of the Rubens Kingdom. Although Iris only knew Roland as a former assassin and wasn't aware he was the one who defeated the Demon King, she insisted he take the job. Roland accepted and prepared to leave. Lyra, in her black cat form, hid in his backpack to tag along. Roland easily located the royal convoy, which included about 100 guards. He used his skills to bypass the knights and entered the king's lavish carriage, catching Randolph in the middle of a romantic moment with a beautiful woman. Roland kicked the woman out, much to the king's surprise. Randolph explained that the meeting was happening in Somalia, a neutral resort area where weapons were discouraged, making Roland's presence essential for security. The prince's envoy was Elvi, a former member of the Heroes Party and a close friend of Almeria, so the king hoped for a successful political marriage to strengthen the alliance between their nation. During a break at a town, Roland met Gregor, the young and arrogant captain of the Royal Knights. Gregor laughed when he heard Roland was just a guild staff member, but Roland quickly humbled him. He pointed out that he had entered the king's carriage without any guard noticing. When Gregor tried to draw his sword, Roland moved instantly, pinning the blade in its scabbard. He warned Gregor that if he had been an assassin, the king would be dead. Realizing Roland's true strength and his role as Almeria's mentor, Gregor apologized and handed over command of the security detail. Roland reorganized the knights into 10 squads of 10, placing them in a tight circle around the royal carriages. He established a clear communication system with Messenger. Lyra joked that Roland should have joined the Demon King's army with his leadership skills, even teasingly suggesting they could start a new army with their future children. As they neared the coast, a messenger reported a group of about 100 bandits approaching from the woods. Roland directed the knights to hold a defensive formation while he rode out to the front. He moved with incredible speed, taking down several bandits instantly. He confronted the bandit leader, who seemed to be waiting for something else to happen. Roland disarmed him and finished him off with a high-speed spear thrust that created a shockwave. The remaining bandits fled. The knights were thrilled to be praised by Roland, feeling a new sense of pride in their work. Almeria rushed out of her carriage with her sword, ready for a fight, but Roland told her the danger was over. She teased him, thinking he came because he was jealous of her marriage interview. Suddenly, the Rubens Kingdom's delegation arrived, led by Prince Fabian. He was a handsome blonde man who claimed he had come to help after hearing the commotion. Roland introduced himself simply as a guild staff member. After a brief interaction, the groups moved to the Somalia coast. At the resort, Roland stayed at the royal villa. Almeria tried to fake a stomach ache to skip the dinner, but Roland told her to act like a proper princess. Later, Elvi arrived and was shocked to find Roland alive after he had disappeared from the heroes' party. Roland told her they would catch up later because he had work to do. He went out to the beach and met Raynora, Prince Fabian's secretary. He had suspected something was off about the prince, and Elvi had confirmed that Raynora was actually one of Fabian's favorite mistresses. Roland charmed her, took her to dinner, and they spent the night together at his room in the villa. The next morning, Lyra was upset because she had been left alone on the beach all night, but Roland turned her back into a cat and focused on the day's events. Meanwhile, Prince Fabian was having a miserable date with Almeria, who was cold and disinterested. He led her to a cafe and gave her a pineapple juice spiked with a powerful charm potion. As she drank it, her eyes went dull. Fabian, thinking he had won, confessed his love and convinced her to marry him. He planned to announce it at lunch and force a kiss in front of everyone to seal the deal. At the joint lunch meeting, Fabian stood up and announced that Almeria had accepted his proposal. King Randolph and Elvi were shocked. When Fabian leaned in to kiss her, Almeria suddenly snapped out of it and slapped him so hard he flew across the room into the food. She called him a creep and denied ever agreeing to marry him. Fabian was confused because the potion should have lasted for months. He didn't realize that Roland had used a purification spell on Almeria 30 minutes before lunch. Roland stepped forward and accused Fabian of drugging the princess to force the engagement. Fabian tried to deny it, but Roland called in Raynora. She admitted that Fabian had ordered her to bribe the cafe staff to spike the juice. She was tired of being treated like an object and revealed that Fabian didn't even know her name. Roland also revealed that the bandit attack from the previous day was a setup by Fabian to look like a hero, which explained why the bandits were unusually clean and waiting for the prince to arrive. King Randolph promised to take in Raynora and her family as nobles in his kingdom to protect them from Fabian's revenge. Exposed and humiliated, Fabian could only scream in rage as his plan fell apart. Following the incident with Prince Fabian, the Rubens king bowed his head and apologized to King Randolph, trying to dismiss his son's actions as a reckless mistake of youth. However, when Randolph pressed him about the drugging and the failed charm potion, the Rubens king pivoted, claiming there was no proof of any medication being used. He even tried to intimidate Princess Almeria, suggesting that her slapping the prince could lead to an international conflict or even war. Roland watched as the atmosphere grew tense, realizing the Rubens king was a master of manipulation. Elvi tried to speak up for the truth, but the Rubens king shut her down, questioning why she would believe a lowly guild staff member over her own royalty. Seeing Elvi's distress, Roland gave her a small shake of his head, signaling her to stay quiet so she wouldn't face punishment back home. King Randolph stood firm, stating he believed Almeria and Roland completely. Elvi then gained the courage to speak up again, admitting she also trusted Roland. Cornered and annoyed by his own knight's betrayal, the Rubens king looked ready to lash out. Roland decided it was time to end the games. He stepped forward and whispered a specific phrase. "Purge Friday." The Rubens king froze, his face turning pale with terror. Before the war with the Demon King, he had secretly hired Roland to assassinate 3 powerful ministers who opposed his rule. One was made to look like a suicide, one was killed by bandits, and the third disappeared. This was the secret foundation of his current power. Roland also reminded him that the king had tried to have him killed afterward to silence him, but Roland had simply faked his death to avoid the hassle of constant assassin. Terrified of the man who knew his darkest secrets, the Rubens king's attitude changed instantly. He began laughing nervously, claiming he was only joking about the lack of evidence. Roland warned him that Almeria and Elvi were his friends, and if anything happened to them, there would be consequences. King Randolph, seeing his opening, added that a father must take responsibility for his son's mess. Broken and humiliated, the Rubens king dropped to his knees and performed a full formal apology, begging for forgiveness. Randolph accepted the apology but noted that the Rubens kingdom now owed him a massive debt, effectively holding this secret over their heads to ensure future cooperation. As the delegation prepared to leave, Elvi had a long, emotional goodbye with Roland. She was frustrated by his casual attitude and demanded he reply to the letters she planned to send every 3 days. Roland told her that was too many, making her storm off in a blush. Almeria, curious about Roland's life, peppered him with questions about where he lived and why he worked at a guild. Lyra, having finally woken up, joined them and teased Almeria, telling her that a good woman makes a man chase her rather than the other way around. Almeria was so impressed by the talking cat that she immediately started calling Lyra master. Later, in a private moment at the villa, King Randolph thanked Roland. He admitted he was happy the marriage fell apart because he didn't want to lose his daughter. He even told Roland that as a friend, he would be perfectly happy if Roland and Almeria ended up together. Roland politely declined the romantic suggestion. Before leaving, the 2 men made a 100,000 coin bet on how many more years the king would remain active in his romantic life, ending the trip with a shared drink and a laugh. Back at the guild in the capital, Iris thanked Roland for the successful mission and even tried to invite him to dinner, but he turned her down to spend time with Lyra. The next day, Miria noticed several small marks on Roland's neck. When she asked about them, Roland awkwardly blamed his cat for biting him and not letting go. In reality, Lyra had been quite clingy after being left alone during the trip. Roland's reputation continued to grow, and The guild even set up a dedicated Roland box counter because so many people specifically requested him. His first client at the new desk was Roger, a D-rank adventurer and protege of Neil. Roger was frustrated because his doppelganger skill, which allowed him to create clones, made him feel like he was just a tool for others. He had stopped using the skill and was trying to work alone. Roland realized Roger was struggling with his identity as an adventurer. To push him, Roland assigned him a B-rank quest to hunt a hellhound, a task far above his rank. Roland explained that in a life-or-death fight, an adventurer must use every tool at their disposal. Roger, motivated by Roland's trust, took the quest. Meanwhile, Roland found Neil hiding outside the guild, worried about his partner. Roland advised Neil to start treating Roger as an equal rather than just a junior. Neil rushed off to help Roger, and by the end of the day, the two returned battered but victorious, having reconciled their partnership through the tough battle. As the weeks passed, Miria noticed a surge in female adventurers visiting the guild just to talk to Roland. She felt a growing sense of jealousy and decided to vent to Iris and Lyra over drinks at Roland's house. Lyra, surprisingly calm, told them that Roland was a great man and it was natural for other females to be attracted to him. She wasn't worried because she knew no one could match her. Later that night, Roland walked Miria home. The walk was quiet, and Miria struggled to find the words to express her feeling. As they reached her door, she looked up at the moon and used a classic, poetic phrase to tell him she loved him without saying it directly. Roland, taking it literally, simply agreed that the moon was indeed beautiful. Though her confession didn't quite land, Miria went inside feeling a mix of relief and determination to try again. Roland headed to the capital for the annual guild instructor training, with Lyra tagging along in his backpack. Upon arrival, Roland checked into a guild-provided inn, while Lyra transformed into her human form to explore the city and find a good place for dinner. At the training session, a pompous instructor named Samuel claimed to be the disciple of a legendary mage to impress the crowd. He demonstrated a basic fire spell, but Roland pointed out that his magic circle was inefficient. When Samuel mocked him, Roland redrew the circle using a simplified method he learned from Lyra. Roland's version produced a massive blast of fire that terrified Samuel and left the other staff members in awe. Roland then called out Samuel's lie, revealing he knew the legendary mage personally and that the man never took disciples. During the break, other staff members warned Roland that Samuel was backed by a powerful noble. Soon after, a massive knight burst into the room, demanding to know who had insulted Samuel. To prevent trouble for his colleagues, Roland stepped forward. The knight tried to intimidate him, but Roland realized that dodging the man's punch would only prolong the conflict. Instead, Roland timed a jump perfectly to take the hit and fly backward, making it look like he was defeated without actually taking any damage. The act was cut short when Princess Almeria suddenly appeared, having been guided there by Lyra. Seeing Roland on the floor, she flew into a rage. She pinned the knight against a wall and punched through the stone right next to his head, threatening to kill him if he didn't apologize. The knight, terrified to the point of wetting himself, begged for forgiveness and fled. Roland managed to calm Almeria down and sent her away before returning to finish his training. Later that night, Roland met Lyra for dinner. She admitted she had lost her wallet but was helped by Almeria, who happened to be nearby. As they drank, they spotted a miserable Samuel at the bar. A very drunk Lyra tried to confront him but ended up accidentally pulling his pants down in front of everyone, revealing he wasn't wearing any underwear. Roland quickly dragged the laughing Lyra out of the pub. The next morning, Roland was summoned by Count Sigimus, the noble backing Samuel. Known as the headhunter for his habit of killing those who displeased him, the Count tried to threaten Roland with a sword. However, Roland saw right through him, realizing the Count was just a beginner killer haunted by the ghosts of his victims. Roland grabbed the blade with his bare hand and coldly lectured the Count on the weight of taking a life. Terrified by Roland's overwhelming aura, the Count backed down and even tried to hire him, but Roland politely declined. Before leaving the capital, Roland was called to see the guild master Toro. The two were old acquaintances from the war against the Demon King. Toro explained that the guild was creating a new tactical consultant position to lead adventurers during large-scale crises. He asked Roland to take the role, especially since rumors of the Demon King's resurrection were spreading. Roland agreed, knowing full well that the resurrected Demon King was currently nursing a hangover in his luggage. With the training complete, Roland used a warp gate to return home. Lyra, excited by his new title, demanded a feast to celebrate, though Roland made sure she stuck to juice this time. The following morning, Roland woke up to find Loge, the arrogant elf, staring at him. Lyra had made a special lunch box for Roland after hearing from local housewives that it's what a partner should do. Loge was visibly jealous, especially after Lyra gave Roland a shy kiss on the cheek before running away. Loge, who frequently visits from the demon realm to check on Lyra, couldn't wrap his head around their domestic life. At the guild, Miria pointed out a suspicious person lurking outside. It turned out to be Loge in a hood. Roland confronted him, and Loge admitted he was there to see if Roland was actually worthy of Lyra. Roland invited him inside to watch him work so he wouldn't look like a creep in the bushes. Inside, the presence of an elf caused a stir among the staff and adventurers. Miria teased Roland, thinking Loge might have a crush on him, which Roland took a bit too literally. During lunch, Roland shared Lyra's food with Loge. Despite his tough talk, Loge passed out after 2 bites of Lyra's cooking, a recurring habit that Roland found odd but respectful in its own way. Later, some thugs tried to harass Loge outside, but Roland stepped in. He twisted the leader's arm and scared them off, leading to a rumor that Roland had an army of 3,000 subordinates. Loge was impressed but acted tsundere about it, shouting that he still didn't approve of Roland before running off. A new character soon arrived, Lenny Conti, a young S-rank adventurer with a skill called clairvoyance. He walked into the guild leading 4 female slaves, a human, a beastman, a dwarf, and an elf by ropes. Lenny claimed to know Roland's secret, that he was the one who defeated the Demon King and was now living with her. He demanded Roland hand over Lyra to add to his collection. Roland stayed calm and realized Lenny's skill was limited. He could only see the past and present of people he had physically seen before, but he couldn't read minds or see the future. Roland went home to find Lenny waiting. Lenny threatened to expose them, but Roland moved with such speed that Lenny didn't even realize Roland had gotten behind him. Roland strangled Lenny, noting that the man had relied too much on his skill and lacked real combat instincts. After finishing Lenny off, Roland disposed of the body in the forest where monsters would leave no trace. He returned home and freed the 4 slaves, using a purification spell to remove their slave marks. The girls Eelt Human, Ryan Beastman, Sanzu Dwarf, and Sue Elf were grateful and asked to work for Roland to repay him. Lyra was especially touched when they called her Madam, and she happily gave them their new names. Roland helped the girls register as adventurers. Despite their rough past, they showed great potential. Eel had high magic power, Ryan was incredibly fast, Sanzu had great strength, and Sue was an expert with a bow. They quickly became known as a beautiful girl squad around the guild. Roland started managing their growth, giving them high-paying herb-gathering quests to help them save money for better gear. He also used a bit of tough love on his other proteges, Neil and Roger, making them do low-rank gutter-cleaning quests to remind them of the heart of adventuring. By the end of the day, Roland's new team of 4 returned successful and happy. They invited Roland to dinner to celebrate their first real earnings, and though they spent the whole walk arguing over who got to sit next to him, Roland smiled, deciding he would treat them to the meal as a reward for their hard work. A new adventurer applicant arrived at the guild just before closing. She wore a deep hood and a thick cloak, but her striking black hair and blood-red eyes caused a stir among the staff. Her name was Candy Minier. When Roland tested her magic power using a crystal, it emitted a blinding flash, recording a value over 10,000 an S-rank level. While the other male staff members were mesmerized by her beauty, Roland remained completely unfazed, which led the female staff to joke that he must only care about personality. To confirm her skills, Roland took Candy to the outskirts of town for a practical exam. A group of curious adventurers followed, hoping to see the beautiful newcomer in action. Candy threw off her cloak, revealing a beauty that rivaled Lyra's. She summoned a blood-red magic circle on the ground, pulling out a long spear with a sickening sound. She warned Roland that he might die, but he simply told her that she couldn't win if she couldn't judge her opponent's strength. Candy attacked with a high-level spear thrust, but Roland moved instantly, appearing behind her and kicking her weapon upward. Realizing she was outmatched, she tried to use her evil eye to charm him, but Roland instantly neutralized it with a purification spell. Candy collapsed, admitting defeat. Roland leaned in and whispered something to her, making her eyes widen in shock. He officially passed her, and as they walked back, she told the crowd of persistent male suitors that she was spending the night with Roland, leaving them all heartbroken. Roland had realized her true identity. Her real name was Candace Mainrad, a high-ranking vampire from the Demon King's army who had once wiped out an entire battalion in a single night. Roland brought her home, where Lyra, wearing an apron, was waiting. The 2 former comrades shared a hug, and Lyra explained that she was living under a magic collar to hide her identity. Candy explained she had been wandering the continent since the war. Lyra offered to help her return to the demon realm, but Candy admitted she actually enjoyed life among humans. She teased Lyra for becoming a maiden in love, making the former Demon King blush furiously. Since Candy had no money, Roland agreed to let her stay for a few days. Later, while Lyra was taking a long bath, Candy's vampire instincts flared up. She explained that for a vampire, drinking blood is like a mix of hunger and intense pleasure. Roland, curious, offered his arm. Candy bit him, and as she drank, her eyes grew hazy with a deep, forbidden satisfaction. After 3 days, Candy moved into an inn, as she didn't want to interfere with Roland and Lyra's private life. She began taking night shift quests that Roland specifically picked for her, such as guarding warehouses or acting as a fake guest at high-end brothel. Her efficiency cleared out the guild's backlog of unwanted quests, earning Roland praise from his colleagues. However, a dark rumor began to spread. Several adventurers and villagers had gone missing near the villa of a noble named Victor Dalton. Roland received letters from the local lord asking for help. Suspecting something was wrong, Roland tracked Candy and found her heading toward Dalton's secluded estate. Roland infiltrated the villa and found a hidden underground chamber filled with the stench of blood and rotting remains. He discovered a pile of mutilated bodies and realized this was a torture chamber. Suddenly, Candy appeared. Her eyes were dull and she claimed she had to kill Roland. She attacked with supernatural speed, but Roland caught her by the throat and slammed her into the floor. He realized she was under a powerful hypnotic spell. He cast a purification spell, shattering the mental shackle. As Candy regained her senses, the noble Dalton arrived with a squad of knights. He tried to claim that Candy had forced him to kidnap people using her vampire powers. Roland saw through the lie immediately. Dalton was a sadist who had used hypnosis to turn Candy into his scapegoat and pet to hide his own crime. Enraged at being used and forced to drink the blood of unworthy victims, Candy's polite demeanor vanished. She summoned her blood-sucking spear and moved like a blur, impaling the knights. Her spear acted like a living thing, pulsing as it drained the knights until they turned into shriveled husks. When Dalton tried to cast another hypnotic spell on her, Roland stepped in and punched him so hard he flew across the yard, shattering his nose and teeth. The noble's game was over. Roland decided to give Dalton a taste of his own medicine. He reminded the noble that Candy was actually Candace Mainred, the legendary vampire who had wiped out an entire battalion in one night. While Dalton trembled, Candy finished off the remaining knights. Dalton tried to pull rank, threatening Roland with the power of his noble house, but Roland remained cold. He informed Dalton that his crimes would be reported directly to the king. When Dalton tried to claim the king wouldn't listen to a lowly clerk, Candy kicked him down. Terrified and begging for his life, Dalton eventually lost control of his bladder. Roland dragged the pathetic noble by his hair into the very underground torture chamber Dalton had used on so many innocent people. Roland made it clear that while Dalton knew how to inflict pain, he didn't know what it felt like to be on the receiving end. Leaving the details of the punishment vague, Roland and Candy eventually left the villa, satisfied that Dalton had paid a fitting price for stealing the ordinary lives of so many others. Roland used a warp gate to take Dalton's broken body to Lord Balder's estate. He explained everything to Balder, who was deeply grateful for Roland's help in cleaning up the corruption in his territory. Roland declined a reward, but Candy happily accepted one, figuring she might as well get paid for her trouble. On the way back, Candy revealed a secret. Vampires are weakened by sunlight, making them vulnerable to magic like hypnosis during the day. This was why Dalton had been able to control her. Roland gave her a light tap on the head, scolding her for looking down on humans and getting caught, but then followed it with a gentle pat, telling her he valued her skills. As they walked through the blue light of dawn, Candy admitted she was touched by Roland's kindness. She explained that for a vampire, offering one's own blood is a sign of total devotion, a way of saying, "I belong to you." She cut her hand and offered Roland a few drops. He drank, noticing it tasted just like normal blood, but the gesture moved Candy to tears. She hugged him and kissed him passionately just as they reached his front door. Suddenly, a furious Lyra appeared, having waited up all night. She was shaking with rage at seeing them kissing in broad daylight on her doorstep. Candy teased her, calling her a peeping Tom, while Lyra ranted about how she had been worried sick. Candy eventually retreated inside, leaving Roland to deal with a sulking Lyra. Roland managed to calm her down, and she admitted she only waited up because she cared about him. He hugged her as the sun rose, ending the long night. The next day at the guild, Roland met a D-rank adventurer named Sasha. She was cheerful and asked for a high-paying quest. Roland assigned her to guard a mountain path used as a detour while a bridge was being repaired. Later that day, news arrived that a massive B-rank monster bird, a gadyhawk, was attacking the path. The guild panicked, but Roland stepped up. He grabbed a horse and rode out alone, telling his worried colleagues that he didn't need any gear, his body was enough. Roland arrived to find Sasha struggling against the giant bird. He climbed a cliff with his bare hands, grabbed a discarded sword, and leaped into the air, taking the monster down in a single strike. Afterward, Sasha looked at him closely. Even though he was wearing his fashionable non-prescription glasses, she recognized him. She realized this was the second time he had saved her life. Roland tried to play it off as a mistake, but it was clear she knew his secret. Back at home, Roland shared a drink with Lyra and finally opened up about his past. He pointed to a scar on his stomach from his third mission as an 11-year-old assassin. He had been sent to kill a corrupt merchant, But when he arrived, another assassin had already done the job. In the confusion, the merchant's young daughter walked in. The other assassin tried to kill the girl to eliminate witnesses, and Roland instinctively jumped in to save her. He killed the other assassin but took a deep wound in the process. That girl was Sasha. Roland felt a heavy sense of guilt because, if he had arrived just a minute earlier, he would have been the one to kill her father. He explained that he was helping her now as a way to make amends for his past. Lyra listened quietly, eventually comforting him and telling him he shouldn't carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. She told him that no matter what happened in his past, she was on his side. Roland realized that he truly wasn't an assassin anymore. He was a man who wanted to protect the people within his reach. He carried a sleepy Lyra to bed, grateful for the ordinary life they now shared. The guild's vacation trip to the port town of Kotka started with high energy. While Miria and the other female staff members excitedly discussed buying swimsuits for the beach, Roland kept a low profile, carrying Lyra in her black cat form inside his backpack. The group arrived at a scenic inn overlooking the ocean, but the peaceful atmosphere didn't last long. While Lyra dragged Miria away to go shopping, Roland met with Candy, who had secretly traveled to Kotka on his orders. Roland had been receiving letters from Elvi, the hero's party knight, warning him about a dangerous new drug called Second that was rotting people's minds and bodies in the Rubens kingdom. Since Kotka was a major trade hub, Roland suspected the drug was being smuggled in through the port. Candy confirmed his fears, reporting that a new brothel in the red light district was selling the drug cheaply to customers. While investigating, Roland spotted Miria being led away by a suspicious recruiter. The naive girl, who had never left her hometown, was being lured into the brothel with promises of easy money. Roland intervened instantly, taking down the recruiter and sending a terrified, blushing Miria back to the safety of the main docks. After interrogating the recruiter, breaking a few metaphorical bones to get him talking, Roland learned that the operation was run by a red-haired man known as the Master. Roland tracked a magical trail to the back of the brothel and discovered a high-level gate spell. Realizing the culprit was a powerful demon, he jumped through the portal and found himself at the lavish estate of Baron Marty Cusella. Roland bypassed the guards with ease, leaping onto the third-story balcony to confront the Baron. The corrupt noble admitted to spreading the drug to fatten his own pockets, claiming that as a lord he was the law. Roland didn't waste time arguing. When the Baron tried to attack with a sword, Roland countered with a single punch that sent the noble flying into a wall, ending his rule. Meanwhile, Lyra had spotted a familiar face in the crowded market, her younger brother, Prince Linus. She followed him to a secluded warehouse, hoping to bring him back to the demon realm. However, she was intercepted by Candy, who warned her that Linus was dangerous. Linus appeared, but he wasn't the brother Lyra remembered. He had grown hateful and arrogant, obsessed with surpassing his genius sister. He revealed that he was the one manufacturing Second to fund his own rise to power, claiming that a magicless Lyra was a disgrace to the Demon King's name. Linus attacked. Candy stepped in to protect her queen, but Linus used a high-level magic armor technique to pierce her chest, leaving her for dead. Just as he turned his sights on Lyra, Roland arrived. Roland's fury was cold and absolute. He mocked Linus's amateur combat skills, dodging every blow with ease. To humiliate the prince, Roland mimicked Linus's own magic armor technique, a feat supposedly impossible for a human, and used it to crush him. Despite Lyra's attempt to reach out to her brother, Linus remained consumed by bitterness. Roland ended the threat by dealing the same fatal blow to Linus that had been given to Candy. Refusing to let Candy die, Roland forced Lyra to teach him a forbidden necromancy spell. The ritual required the caster to transfer a portion of their own life force to the target. Despite the immense risk, Roland performed the spell perfectly. He collapsed from the strain, falling into a deep sleep for a full day. When Roland finally woke up at the inn, he found Candy sitting by his bed. The spell had worked, though she was now a zombie-vampire hybrid, capable of walking in the sun without being weakened. She teased him about his heroic sacrifice, even sneaking into his bed for a few playful bites before Lyra caught them. A tearful Lyra stayed by Roland's side, relieved he was alive. Soon, Iris and Miria visited, bringing fruit and medicine. Iris was clearly embarrassed about a bold swimsuit she had bought to impress him, while Miria remained oblivious to the life-and-death battle that had just occurred. Back home, Loge the elf was still waiting outside Roland's empty house, holding a basket of berries. Convinced that Roland had kidnapped Lyra, he set off toward the city with his heroic delusions in full swing, determined to save his queen from the evil human clerk. After recovering from the strain of using high-level magic to save Dee, Roland spent a few more days resting. Layla explained that the second drug Linus was making was actually an old demon world painkiller that had dangerous side effects on humans. With the trouble over, the guild team finally got their beach day. Layla was shy about wearing a swimsuit, but Dee and Miria eventually convinced her to join them. While the girls relaxed, Roland stayed focused on his training, even turning a sandcastle building session with Miria into a lesson on military fortification. Despite the weirdness, the group had a great time and Rollin even gave Layla a cat-themed hair tie he bought at the market, which she secretly cherished. Back at the guild office, things returned to normal. Rollin helped a young adventurer named Gil, who was jealous because his childhood friend and partner, Marissa, seemed interested in Rollin. Rollin realized Marissa was only acting that way to see if Gil actually cared for her. He gave them both some advice, helping them finally admit their feelings for each other and become a couple. The peace was interrupted when a high-ranking area manager visited for an inspection. She was a petty woman who hated that Rollin's branch had been officially recognized for excellence. She began bullying Iris, the branch manager, demanding she bow and apologize for talking back, and even threatened to fire her. Rollin stepped in to defend Iris. When the manager tried to fire him too, Rollin revealed a letter from the guild master appointing him as a top-level tactical consultant, a position higher than hers. He turned the tables, demanding the manager bow to him instead. Terrified of losing her job, the woman quickly apologized and ran away. The guild staff celebrated the victory, and Iris thanked Rollin for having her back, her respect for him growing even deeper. After the morning meeting, branch manager Iris called Rollin into her office. She explained that the guild headquarters in the royal capital was facing a serious staff shortage. Some members had quit to become adventurers, others went back to their hometowns, and one even left for a surprise wedding. Since these were sudden departures, the capital's west branch was struggling. Iris asked Rollin to go there for a week to help out, confident that he could easily handle the workload of 3 people. When the news broke in the office, Miria was devastated, worried that city women would snatch Rollin away, while others joked that he'd probably come back with a high-ranking promotion or a rich widow. Despite their dramatic goodbyes, Rollin headed home to pack. Layla decided to stay behind, still traumatized by the time she lost her wallet in the city, but she encouraged Rollin to do his best. Upon arriving at the royal capital's west branch, Rollin met the branch manager, Stan Jacka. Stan was a tired, middle-aged man who immediately looked down on Rollin, calling him a country rookie and warning him that the capital was much tougher than a small-town guild. The office was a mess. Over 50 adventurers were crammed inside, shouting and waiting in long lines while the stressed staff struggled to keep up. Rollin didn't waste time. He organized the counter and opened a dedicated window just for quest reports. When an adventurer tried to bully him by lying about his kill count to get more money, Rollin calmly called him out and warned him that the guild decides who gets the good jobs. The man immediately backed down and apologized. By streamlining the process, Rollin cleared the massive crowd in record time. The regular staff were amazed, but Stan was furious that Rollin hadn't sent the items to the official appraisal department. However, when the appraisers checked Rollin's work, they confirmed he had accurately identified nearly 200 items with 0 mistakes. Stan, embarrassed and silenced by the glares of his own staff and the adventurers, could only mutter for Rollin to keep it up before retreating to his office. As the day ended, some coworkers invited Rollin to a host club in the red light district for a welcome drink. While the other men were busy flirting and bragging to the girls, Rollin stayed quiet. He noticed his manager, Stan, in a corner, being handsy and aggressive with a girl named Philly. Stan was using his status as a regular big spender to pressure her into things she clearly didn't want to do. Rollin stepped in, his voice cold and intimidating, making Stan jump back in fear. Not recognizing Rollin in the dark, a terrified Stan scurried away. Philly thanked Rollin and later slipped him a note with her address, wanting to thank him properly. Rollin met her after her shift, and she led him to her modest apartment. She admitted she felt a spark the moment he entered the club, and they spent the night together. The next day, Rollin noticed a male staff member named Ludo being bullied by a senior female coworker for making repetitive mistakes. Ludo was clearly anxious and felt like a burden. To help him, Rollin gave Ludo a simple task: handwriting 100 copies of a new reception form Rollin had designed. The form asked for basic info like name, rank, and desired quest. By having adventurers fill these out while waiting, the intake process became incredibly fast. Ludo felt useful for the first time, and the staff called it a revolution. Stan tried to stop it, claiming it went against their traditional way, but Rollin stood his ground. He told Stan that a manager's job is to support their team, not hold them back with outdated rules. When Stan tried to throw a tantrum, the other staff members finally turned on him, mocking his incompetence and his behavior at the host club. Defeated, Stan later offered a small apology to the team. Seeing how much better the guild was running, Stan eventually asked Rollin for advice. Rollin suggested changing the closing hours and pre-sorting appraisals to save time. Stan realized he had been a bad leader and started taking notes, treating Rollin more like a consultant than a temp. Suddenly, the guild master, Taro, barged in. He told Rollin that his success at the Lottie branch had made him famous among other branch managers. Toro presented Rollin with 5 different job offers from other branches, all offering double his current salary and high-ranking position. Toro mentioned that even Iris knew about this and wouldn't stand in his way if he wanted to leave. Roland returned home to find Iris and Miria completely wasted on wine, passed out on his sofa. They had come to beg Layla to help them keep Roland from leaving. Layla, sitting on Roland's lap, told him she was proud his skills were finally being recognized and that she would support whatever he chose. A half-awake, tearful Iris and a sobbing Miria begged him not to go before passing out again. After his week in the capital ended, Roland returned to the Lottie branch. He met with Iris, who was bracing herself for his resignation. To her immense relief, Roland told her he had rejected all the offers. He realized that while other places offered more money, they didn't have the friends and the atmosphere he had grown to enjoy. Iris practically ran out of the room to share the good news with the rest of the team. Branch manager Iris approached Roland with a high-priority mission from the guild headquarters. A massive underground cave had been discovered nearby, and because of the potential danger and rare items inside, they needed a large-scale investigation. Since Roland was now a tactical consultant, the guild master specifically put him in charge of the entire operation. Roland realized that sending a huge crowd into a narrow cave would be a disaster, so he decided to pick a small, elite team. When the news hit the office, the female staff members were more interested in Roland's rising career than the mission, sensing he was on the fast track to becoming a high-ranking official in the capital. Miria, however, was genuinely happy for him and helped organize a list of over 40 skilled adventurers. Despite the staff's support, most adventurers were too scared of the unknown risks to join. Left with no choice, Roland recruited his own circle. He brought in Dee, who, as a vampire zombie, excelled in the dark and couldn't be killed easily. He also recruited Roch, Layla's loyal elf subordinate, after Layla personally asked him to help. Layla even packed a lunch for Roland, shyly wishing him luck before hiding back in the house. The team reached the cave entrance, which looked like it had been hidden by ancient magic that recently wore off. As they ventured deeper, Roland noticed the cave was actually man-made, featuring stone paths and stairs. Eventually, they stumbled upon a massive underground arena. Hundreds of wealthy nobles and merchants were gathered there, betting on a sick game called slave hunting, where a giant ogre man hunted down terrified slaves for sport. Disgusted by the cruelty, Roland moved faster than the eye could see, decapitated the ogre, and rescued 10 slaves, including a young girl. He quickly warped them back to his house, leaving them in Layla's care, before returning to the arena to find the person behind the operation. Back at the arena, the announcer introduced a new fighter, a small, masked girl. Roland immediately recognized her fighting style. She used low-level, rapid-fire spells to gauge her opponent before finishing them with a massive blast. It was Lena, the genius mage from his former hero party. After she obliterated her opponent, Roland followed her to the waiting room. Inside, he overheard a shady, flamboyant man named Pasca manipulating Lena, promising to free her father, the head of her orphanage, from prison if she kept winning fights. Roland stepped in after Pasca left, and a tearful Lena clung to him, relieved to see her big brother figure again. Roland took her back to his house, where she joined the growing group of rescued children and subordinates. Lena explained that the new local lord had been embezzling the orphanage's funds and had imprisoned the head priest when he tried to complain. Pasca had tricked Lena into fighting in the illegal arena to earn her father's freedom. Seeking a legal solution, Roland visited King Randolph in the capital. However, the king admitted he couldn't touch the corrupt lord because his family provided a quarter of the kingdom's wealth. The king essentially told Roland that while the crown couldn't act officially, he would look the other way if Roland decided to handle things himself. Roland left the palace with a cold resolve, knowing exactly what he had to do. The team discussed Lena's situation back at the house. Layla reminded everyone that while Lena had been a dangerous enemy during the war, her current struggle was a separate issue. Dee and Roch agreed, but the group worried about the corrupt lord behind the illegal arena. Since the lord was a high-ranking noble and a relative of the royal family, taking him down legally was nearly impossible. Roland noted that destroying the arena would require massive magical power, which wasn't his specialty. Layla stepped up, claiming she had developed a new magical theory that could work even without her mana, though she hadn't tested it yet. Roland told her to keep working on it while he handled the noble his own way. Roland headed back to the arena's hidden exit, which led to a hill overlooking the city of Emir. Emir was the kingdom's second-largest city, a massive fortress town that stayed busy even late at night. To find the man named Pasca who had tricked Lena, Roland went to a local tavern. The owner immediately recognized the name, identifying Pasca Hamalainen as the corrupt captain of the local knights. He explained that Pasca was the lord's right-hand man, using his position to extort protection fees from local businesses, and throwing anyone who complained into prison. While they were talking, Pasca himself walked in with a group of rowdy guards. The atmosphere turned cold as the other customers fled in fear. Roland sat in the corner and listened to them brag. Pasca boasted that he was close to buying a noble title using the money he had made, and he promised his men they would all become official knights under his new house. Pasca eventually left a few coins on the table, nowhere near enough to cover the bill, and walked out laughing. Roland left extra money for the owner and followed them into the night. One by one, Roland silently took out Pasca's guards in the dark alleys until only the captain was left. When Pasca realized his men were gone, Roland confronted him about the orphanage head who had been imprisoned. Pasca burst into a cruel laugh, revealing that the old man had died in prison long ago. He mocked Lena, calling her a stupid brat for fighting in the arena to save a man who was already dead. He bragged about how he had used her genius to fund his own rise to nobility. Cold with fury, Roland told Pasca that he was just a small-time pest who was easily replaceable. When Pasca tried to draw his sword, Roland moved instantly, pinning Pasca's foot to the ground with a blade. He then pinned Pasca's hands to the earth using a fork from the tavern, effectively crucifying him to the street. As a crowd of locals gathered, they began shouting insults at the dying captive, but Roland stopped them from intervening, making sure Pasca felt every bit of his slow end. With one pest gone, Roland used his skills to infiltrate the Lord's castle. He bypassed the guards and entered the office of Lord Lucas Moisendel. The young noble was arrogant, claiming the kingdom couldn't survive without his family's wealth. Roland revealed his identity as a special investigator for the king and demanded the return of the embezzled funds. When the Lord tried to call for Pasca, Roland informed him the captain was already dead. Roland then pointed out a fatal flaw in the Lord's plan. The illegal arena was actually built just across the border on a neighboring lord's land. This meant Lucas had no legal jurisdiction there, and his actions were an act of aggression against another noble. Just as the lord started to panic, a massive explosion rocked the castle. Looking through binoculars, they saw a giant crater where the arena used to be. Layla and the others had successfully tested their new magic. Broken and terrified, the Lord surrendered. Roland used a warp gate to bring him directly to King Randolph in the capital. The king, seeing the evidence, officially stripped Lucas of his title and lands. He thanked Roland for handling the situation, though Roland declined an invitation to breakfast, wanting to get home before Lena woke up. Back at the house, Layla, Dee, and Roch were waiting. They tried to act innocent about the explosion, but their exhaustion gave them away. When Lena woke up, she hugged Roland, relieved he hadn't disappeared. Roland assured her she didn't have to fight anymore. Layla and the others even prepared a celebratory meal, having learned some cooking tips from Miria. A few days later, the king's official ruling was announced. The Moisendel family was dissolved, and their lands were seized. Princess Almiria visited Roland's house to share the news and announced that she would be taking over as the head of Lena's orphanage to ensure the children were safe. She and Lena bickered playfully, but it was clear they cared for each other. Roland also convinced a local noble, Lord Balder, to invest in the orphanage. He explained that educating orphans would create a skilled workforce for the future, turning a social problem into an economic benefit. Balder, always looking for a way to improve his standing, eagerly agreed to build a new facility. Later that day, more visitors arrived. Mary and her mother, Leti, came to visit. Mary and Lena quickly became friends, with Mary boldly declaring she intended to marry Roland one day, which Lena surprisingly agreed to as long as she could stay his sister. To end his busy day, Roland attended a private lunch with King Randolph and two old comrades, Toro, the guild master, and Frank, the captain of the Royal Guard. They joked about Roland's retirement and thanked him for his help with the orphanage project. During the lunch, Princess Almiria tried to barge in, but Roland stepped out to calm her down, promising to have tea with her later. After a long day of dealing with kings, nobles, and old friends, Roland finally returned home to his unconventional family, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known during his days as an assassin. Roland completed the Plant Master written exam with ease, finishing well before the other candidates. While one stressed-out guild staff member quit halfway through, another man, a scruffy pharmacist, tried to cheat by peeking at Roland's answers. Roland ignored him and, as the written portion ended, the examiner assigned the practical task, collecting 100 specific plants and herbs by the next day. Outside, the scruffy pharmacist followed Roland, trying to strike up a conversation. He bragged about running a struggling pharmacy and admitted to a cruel scam. He had been selling plain wheat flour as medicine to a desperate beastman child who was trying to save his sick mother. Roland immediately realized this was Gita, the boy who had stolen Layla's wallet. The man mocked the child, calling him a filthy brat and laughing about how he overcharged him for useless powder. Cold fury took over. Roland slammed the man against a tree and then into the ground, leaving him terrified and humiliated in the woods. Roland warned him never to go near Gita again before leaving him to deal with the wild animals. Using a warp gate, Roland returned home and gave the necessary herbs to Roch. The elf subordinate, eager to please Layla, used secret elven techniques to create a powerful medicine for Gita's mother. Rollin also visited Iris at the Lottie branch to discuss a long-term plan for the boy's family. Back in the capital, Rollin spent the night with Layla, who was unusually affectionate and jealous of his past experiences. The next morning, he met Roch outside the guild headquarters. Roch handed over the finished medicine but accidentally dropped a piece of fabric from his pocket. It was one of Layla's undergarments. Rollin realized Roch's loyalty had crossed into a creepy, obsessive territory, but decided to keep it quiet for now, simply feeling pity for Layla's trusted subordinate. Rollin entered the guild office to turn in his 100 plants. The examiner was shocked by his speed, suspecting foul play. However, during the oral exam, Rollin demonstrated such deep knowledge, even correcting the examiner on where certain rare plants grow, that all doubts vanished. The examiner admitted Rollin's performance was perfect, earning him the highest score in guild history. Rollin officially became a licensed plant master, with his certification badge set to be delivered to his home branch. When the examiner jokingly asked if he was a professional chemist, Rollin honestly replied he was an assassin who learned about plants to make poison. The examiner laughed it off, thinking it was a joke. After a relaxing trip to his old home, Rollin returned to the king with the letter he found. The king wasn't surprised that corrupt nobles were plotting against him, seeing it as a natural reaction to his recent crackdown on their crime. Rollin provided the king with a list of basic assassin tactics to help the royal guards better protect the palace. The king then brought up a new project. The kingdom of Badenhark wanted to set up its own adventurers guild system. Since Rollin was the best at making things run smoothly, the king and the guild master, Toro, wanted him to lead a team to help Queen Leti establish the branch. Rollin agreed, but only on the condition that he could choose his own team of staff and adventurers. Back at home, Rollin discussed the move with Layla. She was hesitant at first, but eventually admitted she wanted to go with him, especially since she missed the young girl Mary who lived there. After some loud and chaotic help from her subordinate Roch, who accidentally revealed Layla had been reading romance novels and dreaming of a romantic invitation, Rollin simply told Layla to come with him. She happily agreed. A few days later, Guild Master Toro arrived at the Lottie branch. He kept his identity a secret at first, letting the rude staff member Morley boss him around like a rookie just for a laugh. After the branch manager Iris cleared up the confusion, Toro officially handed Rollin a massive quest titled Guild System Establishment and Operation. This gave Rollin full authority to pick his squad, which the staff already jokingly called the Rollin unit because so many people were loyal to him. Toro also delivered Rollin's official plant master badge, though he looked a bit jealous of Rollin's popularity with women. Once the room was cleared of other staff, Toro's tone became serious. He warned Rollin that during his recent travels to Badenhark, he thought he saw Amy, Rollin's former mentor, and the woman who raised him. Toro explained that Badenhark was currently a mess of political infighting. A dark guild had reportedly formed in the shadows, dealing in kidnapping, smuggling, and assassinations. Toro feared that Rollin's mentor might be involved with this criminal group. Rollin, trusting Toro's sharp instincts, realized this mission was no longer just about paperwork. He was heading into a confrontation with his own past. Roland immediately got to work, calling over Neil, a D-rank adventurer. Roland's intense assassin aura slipped out for a moment, scaring the young man, but Roland quickly switched back to his professional staff persona. He asked about the Roland unit, a group Neil had formed of adventurers who felt they owed Roland a favor. Neil bragged that he could gather 50 men, while his partner Roger claimed he could get 100. Roland tasked them with heading to the Duchy of Badenhark to help establish the first guild branch there, warning them that since it was former demon army territory, the missions would be dangerous and the pay uncertain. Despite this, both adventurers were eager to prove their loyalty. Back at the Lottie branch, the air was thick with silent pressure from the female staff. Miria and several others were practically begging to be picked for the 3-month assignment, viewing it as a romantic workplace getaway. Roland ignored the predatory glares and made his selections. He invited branch manager Iris, who accepted with a blush, and Miria, who was overjoyed. He rounded out the team with 4 other male staff members, including 2 acquaintances from the capital's West branch. When the arrogant Morley tried to force his way onto the team, Roland manipulated him by claiming he was too talented to leave behind, tricking him into staying to watch the home branch. Using a warp gate, Roland transported the team to the outskirts of Azaria, the capital of Badenhark. The city still bore the scars of war, with scorched walls and ongoing repairs. As they approached the gates, 2 guards blocked their way, refusing to believe that a group of country commoners had been invited by the queen. The situation grew tense until Princess Mary Alias came charging out of the castle and jumped into Roland's arm. Queen Leti followed closely behind, shocking the guard. After the queen scolded the guards for nearly turning away her state guests, the gates were opened, and Roland's team was welcomed into the city with full honors. The first few days were a whirlwind of meetings and site inspections. The biggest hurdle was that the local people didn't understand what an adventurers guild actually was. To fix this, Roland decided to use Mary as a public face for the guild. While out in the city with Layla, in her black cat form, and Mary, they visited a local cafe where the owner was struggling with the rising cost of blood oranges. The price had spiked because monsters were attacking the supply caravans. Roland turned this into a mock quest for Mary, treating it as her first official mission to help the townspeople. Roland, Layla, and Mary headed to the trade route to investigate. They found the culprits, a colony of big ants. Mary was terrified at first, as the monsters were the size of large dogs, but Roland coached her through the attack. Though she stuttered her skill name, she successfully took down one of the ants. When the massive queen ant emerged from the ground, Roland's subordinates Dee and Loge arrived to assist. Dee played the role of a supportive, if creepy, big sister, while Loge bickered with her. Roland ended the threat himself by leaping onto the queen ant and delivering a mana-infused hand strike that nearly decapitated it, leaving Mary in awe of his strength. Back in the city, the news of the princess's quest spread quickly. Roland set up a suggestion box at the cafe, and within a week it was overflowing with requests from citizens. The concept of the guild was finally catching on. Meanwhile, more members of the Roland unit began arriving in Azaria, including the beautiful girl squad, Eel, Ryan, Sanzu, and Sue, and the shovel-wielding combat engineer Zepit. Roland began assigning these experienced adventurers to the more difficult requests while giving Mary softer missions like childcare to keep her involved. With the staff, the adventurers, and the quests all in place, the Badenhark Guild branch officially began its operations. Mary was eager to take on a monster-slaying quest, but Roger was skeptical, doubting Roland would let someone so inexperienced jump into a real fight. Layla, the legendary beast in cat form, laughed, noting that Roger actually does a good job supporting Mary while letting her handle the bulk of the work. Roland, keeping his promise to Queen Leti to keep Mary safe, decided on a low-risk job, guarding a small ranch on the outskirts of the capital where horses and sheep had been attacked. It was essentially a 2-day lookout job. Mary was thrilled to take down the bad guys, and the trio headed out. With Mary busy, Roland focused on administration. He met with Iris, the branch manager, to head to the royal castle for a progress report and a meeting with government officials. At the castle, they met 2 officials, one thin and one chubby, who seemed completely uninterested in the guild's success. When Roland and Iris explained that the guild needed more staff to handle the rising number of requests, the officials complained about the budget, claiming the country was broke because the queen was busy setting up a new parliament. Iris started losing her temper at their laziness, but Roland stepped in. He presented a detailed report showing that the guild was already making enough profit to cover its own costs and more. He then played a different card. He told the officials that if the guild succeeded, they would get all the credit as the founding fathers, but if they didn't help, he'd ask Queen Leti to replace them. Fearing for their reputations, the officials immediately changed their tune and promised full cooperation. A week later, the guild's recruitment drive was a hit, with 20 applicants for just 2 positions. Roland assigned Milia to train the new staff while he handled the daily operations. During his shift, a high-ranking A-rank adventurer and his team arrived. They were locals from Badenherk who had fled when the Demon King attacked, but returned to help rebuild their homeland. Even though the rewards were lower than in other kingdoms, they didn't care about the money. They wanted to serve their country. Roland was impressed, noting that these adventurers acted more like true knights than actual knights did. Later, Neil, a loyal adventurer, brought Roland a lead on a fortune teller named Betty who reportedly had the clairvoyance skill. Roland needed someone who could see people's hidden abilities to help with adventurer exams, as most locals didn't even know they had magic skill. Roland tracked Betty down to a rundown house in the slums. She was a messy, hungover woman, but when she looked at Roland, she turned pale. Using her ability, she saw the memories of his skills, the years of brutal training, and the secret great deeds he had performed as an assassin. She even claimed one of his skills had been stolen in the past, which confused Roland. Regardless, he hired her to help identify the skills of new recruits, promising her good liquor in exchange for her services. Back at the guild, a new problem emerged. A massive shortage of fortune grass, the main ingredient for healing potions. A group of female adventurers led by Eel reported that the grass was disappearing from the forests. Roland investigated and realized that horned rabbits were overbreeding and eating all the vegetation. To fix this, he issued a massive rabbit hunting quest. While most adventurers were motivated by the reward, a group of female fans of Roland turned the quest into a competition after he promised to go to dinner with whoever hunted the most. However, Roland suspected there was a deeper reason for the rabbit outbreak. He discovered that gray wolves, the natural predators of the rabbits, were being illegally poached. He tracked down a poacher in the forest and discovered they belonged to the Welger Merchant Group, a shady organization selling wolf pelts to foreign nobles. Roland decided to handle the problem efficiently. He pretended to be a corrupt official and offered to lead the merchant group's 50-man hit squad to a forest full of wolves. Once deep in the woods, he cast a hater spell on the men, a magic that makes monsters aggressively target the person affected. Suddenly, the gray wolves, usually shy around humans, turned into man-eating monsters. As the poachers were torn apart, Roland stood by calmly, explaining that weak evil is always crushed by true evil. He left the leader, Bale, to flee in terror, only for the man to collapse and be found by Roland's vampire companion, who was waiting in the shadows to finish the job. Bale, the leader of the poachers Roland had spared, woke up in a room at an inn. He had been rescued by a woman named Candy, who spoke with a slow, sweet voice. She told him that she found him covered in blood and had been nursing him back to health for 3 days. Bale was still terrified, haunted by the screams of his men being torn apart by wolves in the forest. Candy claimed to be an adventurer from a neighboring kingdom, earning money by taking on quests. Bale was instantly captivated by her beauty and grace, thinking she looked more like a noble lady than a warrior. When she asked him what happened in the forest, Bale hesitated to mention the shady Welger merchant group, but Candy's gentle touch and sweet words made him lose his guard. He felt a strange, cold vibe behind her smile, but he was too infatuated to care and began to open up. Back at the guild, Roland reported to Iris that the poacher problem was solved and the gray wolves would no longer be hunted. This meant the horned rabbit population would eventually stabilize and the shortage of healing herbs would end. Iris laughed, telling Roland that Princess Mary was upset with him for bullying the rabbits. Roland joked that he was happy to play the villain if it helped everyone. In the lobby, Mary was indeed crying, clutching Layla the black cat so hard that the legendary beast started to suffocate. Mary couldn't understand why the cute rabbits had to be hunted. Roland tried to explain that the rabbits were eating all the medicine needed to save sick people, like her mother, Queen Leti. This logic backfired, making Mary cry even harder at the thought of her mother dying. As the chaos unfolded, a live horned rabbit that had escaped from another adventurer hopped past. Roland caught it by the neck. To stop Mary's crying, he offered to let her keep it as a pet so it wouldn't be hunted. Mary immediately cheered up, named the rabbit Sako, and promised to take care of it. Layla was annoyed, realizing she now had a rival for Mary's attention. Later that night, Roland's vampire companion sneaked into Roland's room at the castle. She had been undercover, using the name Candy to get close to Bale. She reported that Bale had fully trusted her and revealed the Welger merchant group's next move, kidnapping the children of wealthy officials and former nobles to extort money and gain political leverage. Roland realized the organization was like a cancer growing within the kingdom, and he needed to stop them before they became too powerful to handle. After the briefing, stayed the night, playfully demanding payment for her hard work. The next day, Mary was busy caring for her new pet rabbit in the castle. Layla watched over her, feeling bored but staying close as Roland had requested. A maid named Luno, whom they both knew well, approached them and offered to show Mary a secret spot with the best food for the rabbit. As they walked through a quiet, dimly lit corridor, Mary suddenly collapsed. Luno caught her, but her voice and personality completely changed. This wasn't the real Luno, it was an imposter. The fake Luno realized Layla wasn't a normal cat but couldn't sense any magic, concluding she was just a rare talking animal. The imposter locked Mary, the rabbit, and Layla in a dusty, isolated room outside the main castle area. Before leaving, the woman's face and eyes shifted, revealing her true form. She told Layla that the real maid was still alive and that she was only doing this for the money. With a smirk, the kidnapper locked the door and vanished, leaving Layla and a sleeping Mary trapped. A few days before the kidnapping, Roland had already sensed danger. He met with Layla and Roger to explain that the Welger merchant group was aggressively raising funds through illegal poaching and drug trafficking. Their next target was the royal family, specifically Princess Mary. Roland decided to use a shadow spell to create a magical double of Mary. He instructed Roger and Layla to guard the fake princess as bait, while the real Mary stayed safely at the guild. Roger was offended that Roland doubted his skills, but Roland insisted on the plan as an insurance policy to gather information on the enemy's strength. Back in the present, inside the isolated room, Layla realized Roland's plan had worked perfectly. The fake Mary was asleep on the bed, and the kidnappers had no idea they had the wrong girl. However, Layla needed to report back. The room was locked with a high barred window. Layla tried to climb the wall but kept slipping. She turned to Sako, the horned rabbit, and convinced it to help. The rabbit jumped onto a table and Layla hopped onto its back. Using the rabbit's powerful jump as a springboard, Layla leaped high enough to grab the window ledge and squeezed through the bars to head for the guild. Meanwhile, Roger was in a total panic. He had been watching the group in the castle corridor, but they had vanished in an instant. He was terrified of having to tell Roland he failed after bragging so much about his elite skills. Layla reached the guild and found Roland. He immediately understood that Roger had messed up. Since the real Mary was right there helping the staff, Roland followed Layla to the kidnapper's hideout, a lonely house on the outskirts of the city. Layla explained that the kidnapper might have used a high-level concealment skill to move the fake Mary so quickly. Roland reached the house and moved with lethal speed. He scaled the walls and entered through a second-story window. Inside, he found the kidnappers completely relaxed, thinking they were safe. Roland moved through the house like a ghost, ending the lives of the guards one by one before they even realized he was there. In the living room, he encountered a young man named Victor, known as Iron Wall Victor. Victor possessed a skill called Absolute Defense, which created a rainbow-colored barrier that blocked all physical and magical attacks automatically. Victor was arrogant, believing even the Demon King couldn't touch him. Roland tested the barrier and realized it reacted to hostility or intent to harm. To bypass it, Roland completely cleared his mind, erasing all emotion and intent. He moved in a state of perfect calm as if he were just a part of the air. Because he felt no malice, the barrier didn't trigger. Roland calmly reached out and grabbed Victor by the throat. Terrified and choking, Victor immediately surrendered. He admitted he was just a mercenary hired through an underground guild to guard the prize. He revealed that the person who actually kidnapped Mary was a woman named Maria, who had already left because she found guarding the prisoner boring. Victor also mentioned that the Welger merchant group was just a middleman for a larger plot. Roland spared Victor and told him that if he wanted a real job, he should visit the Adventurers Guild. Roland then rescued the rabbit, Sako, and returned to the guild. He returned the rabbit to Mary and apologized to Roger for the scare, though Roger was deeply humbled by his mistake. Roland later met with Queen Leti to explain the situation. He informed her that the kidnapping was a coordinated effort between the Welger merchant group and a shadowy organization of elite underground adventurers. To step up security, Roland hired the Beautiful Girl Squad, Eel and her team, as Mary's personal bodyguards. The castle became much livelier with the 4 girls around, often playing with Mary and keeping her busy with her studies. However, the peace was short-lived. A week later, Victor's body was found by a lake. He had been killed by a single professional stab to the heart. A strike so perfect he likely didn't even feel it. Roland realized that the absolute defense had been bypassed by someone even more dangerous than Victor. In the shadows, Count Barbatus Gurura met with his top assassin, a woman named Amy. It was revealed that Amy was the one who had killed Victor for his failure. The Count was plotting to destabilize the kingdom by manipulating the new parliament. He viewed the current king's justice as a threat to corrupt nobles and wanted him gone. His ultimate goal was to destroy the neighboring Ferindo kingdom, but he knew the hero princess stood in his way. He gave Amy her next mission, not a kidnapping but the assassination of the hero. Roland continued his work at the guild's reception desk, helping new staff members learn the ropes. A D-rank adventurer named Render was causing a scene, complaining that he was only being assigned low-level herb-gathering quests despite his rank. Render possessed a division skill that allowed him to create clones of himself, but his combat power dropped significantly with every clone he made. Because of this, the staff kept him on safe jobs to ensure he didn't get killed. Roland saw an opportunity to teach both Render and the staff a lesson. He introduced Render to a female adventurer named Juiz, who had a field enhancement skill. Her ability was weak on its own because it had a very small range and a long cooldown. But Roland realized that if she enhanced Render before he divided, his clones would be much stronger. He assigned them a D-rank quest to gather paralyzing herbs in a dangerous forest, explaining that while individual power is important, the right combination of skills can make a team unstoppable. By evening, the duo returned successful and happy. They had easily defeated monsters by overwhelming them with numbers. Roland's junior staff member was so impressed by Roland's ability to see hidden potential that he begged to become his apprentice. To dig deeper into the Welger merchant group, Roland went undercover as an assassin named Slade and entered a secret underground guild located beneath a local bar. There, he met a veteran informant named Bix. To test the waters, Roland accepted a high-profile quest to assassinate a wealthy shipping magnate named Biscotta. Roland negotiated a massive pay increase for the job, sensing that the underground guild was underpaying its members and pocketing the rest. Bix, acting as his partner, provided detailed intel on Biscotta's mansion and schedule. However, on the night of the mission, Bix betrayed Roland, leading him into a trap where the mansion's guards were waiting. Bix intended to kill Roland and keep the entire reward for himself. Roland didn't panic. He neutralized the magical restraints with ease and moved through the guards like a ghost. Within 2 minutes, the entire security force was dead. Roland then turned his blade on Bix, killing the traitor instantly. Roland reached Biscotta's bedroom but didn't kill him. Instead, he explained that the Welger merchant group was likely behind the hit because Biscotta had refused their buyout offer. Roland helped Biscotta fake his death and smuggled him out of the country to safety. He then returned to the underground guild with a fake body to claim the reward. The guild official, Moise, was actually pleased that Roland had killed Bix, as Bix was known for betraying his partners. While looking for his next lead, Roland found a wanted poster in the underground guild. It offered a massive reward for a man who had destroyed an illegal fighting arena. The description, including multiple aliases like Hamel and Roland, and the mention of perception blocking skills, matched Roland perfectly. Roland traced the request back to a former noble named Ben Amstel. He traveled to a remote town to find him, but as he approached the manor, he sensed 3 elite assassins guarding the place. Roland didn't hesitate. He scaled the walls and took down the first guard before the man could even scream. The other 2 tried to use their specialized movement skills to ambush him, but Roland was far faster. He killed them both with clinical precision, noting that in a fight between professionals, the one who stays calm during the unexpected always wins. With the guards gone, Roland prepared to confront the man who had put a price on his head. Roland entered the room and found Ben Amstel, the former count, hiding under his desk in a cold sweat. After Roland assured him he wasn't there to cause trouble, Amstel sat down and explained the truth behind the bounty on Roland's head. It turned out Amstel had no grudge against Roland and didn't even know about the destroyed underground arena. He was being blackmailed. 2 months ago, his 4-year-old daughter, Sylphine, was kidnapped. The kidnappers forced him to use his name to post the bounty through the underground guild, promising to return his daughter once the job was done. The 3 assassins Roland had just killed weren't just guards. They were watchers sent to make sure Amstel didn't step out of line. Desperate, Amstel begged Roland to save his daughter. Roland agreed, mostly because he wanted to find out who actually knew his true identity and was using Amstel as a shield. He left the cleanup of the 3 bodies to the former count and headed back to the royal castle. Back in his room, Roland summoned Layla, who shifted from her black cat form back into her true form. She teased him for taking on another troublesome job, but Roland explained that he needed to clear away any threats to his normal life. Their conversation turned playful and intimate, but just as things were heating up, Roger started pounding on the door, shouting that he had come to collect Layla. Roland ignored the interruption, but then Dee appeared outside the window, jokingly suggesting they all have fun together. Layla angrily chased them off and ended up spending the rest of the night sleeping in Roland's arms. Meanwhile, Dee, still undercover as Candy, was dealing with Bale. She was getting tired of the act, especially since Bale kept trying to get close to her. To keep her cover, she pretended her friend's daughter had been kidnapped, and Bale, wanting to impress her, revealed that a specific faction within the Welger merchant group was behind the Amstel kidnapping. Just as he was about to give more details, Dee sensed 4 assassins surrounding the inn. They had realized Bale was leaking information. Since it was dawn, Dee's vampire powers were at their weakest. She grabbed Bale and jumped out the window to escape, but the assassins were skilled. She tried to use her evil eye to paralyze them, but they had magic items to block status effects. Just as a swordsman closed in to kill her, Roland appeared from the shadows and instantly neutralized the attacker. He had noticed Dee missed her regular check-in and came to investigate. Roland confronted Bale, who recognized him from the forest incident. Roland revealed that Dee was working for him and that they had used Bale to get inside info. Despite the deception, Roland spared Bale and gave him a massive pile of cash, 9 million gold from his underground earnings. He told Bale to take the money, quit the criminal life and go live a quiet life in his hometown. Terrified but grateful, Bale took the money and fled. Following the map Bale provided, Roland tracked the kidnappers to a deserted village. He bypassed their magical detection barriers and entered a house where the girl was being held. He quickly took out 2 guards, literally twisting the head of one and throwing a knife through the forehead of the other. Finally, he encountered a blue-haired girl named Rabbi. She was a mage who specialized in force field. She tried to act tough, repeatedly casting her ultimate defense, but Roland used Dispel to shatter her barriers over and over again. Eventually, Rabbi broke down in tears, realizing she was completely outmatched. Roland, feeling an odd sense of guilt, comforted her and promised not to hurt her if she cooperated. Roland rescued Sylphine and took Rabbi along with him. Using a teleportation gate, he returned the girl to a tearful Amstel. During tea, Rabbi revealed the true mastermind, Count Barbatus Gurura of the Ferindo Kingdom. Amstel was shocked, as he had no connection to the man. It also came out that Amstel was the original founder and former master of the Welger merchant group before his successor turned it into a criminal organization. The next morning, Roland brought Rabbi to the palace. Princess Mary immediately got jealous, claiming Roland was her future husband and telling Rabbi not to steal him. Roland then took Rabbi to the Adventurers Guild to register her as a member. Rabbi was arrogant, boasting about her elite training and high magic power. However, when she took the crystal ball test, her score was a pathetic 230, ranking her at the lowest F rank. Refusing to believe it, she claimed the crystal was broken. To prove it was working, Roland touched the crystal. It glowed with such intense power that it exploded, sending a shard flying straight into Rabbi's forehead and knocking her out cold. The local adventurers just laughed, having expected the explosion the moment Roland touched the device. Roland applied a bandage to Rabbi's forehead, which she had injured when his magic power caused the testing crystal to explode. Despite her complaints, Roland reminded her that in a real fight, no one gives a starting signal. He decided to hold a practical exam to see how her force field actually worked since he had destroyed it too easily with Dispel during their first encounter. A crowd of 20 adventurers followed them outside, eager to see the legendary Argon in action. Once in the field, Roland tested Rabbi's reaction time by instantly appearing behind her. He then had her expand her barrier. She managed to create a massive dome with a 10-meter radius. Roland realized her ability wasn't a standard spell. It was a skill. Unlike magic, it didn't require a long cast time or high mana consumption, explaining why her crystal score was so low. He identified it as a status quo skill. It froze the space of the barrier in time, making it immune to physical impact. Roland officially passed her, and while local parties immediately tried to recruit her, he reminded her that she already had work to do at the guild. Back at the guild, Roland assigned Rabbi her first F-rank quest, cleaning gutters. Though she hated the uncool job, she accepted it. As the sun set, Princess Mary rushed into the guild to walk Roland home. On the way back to the castle, Roger informed Roland that Mary had been studying hard just to earn more time to play with him. Mary then boldly claimed that once she turned 15, she wanted Roland to be her husband. Roland gave a vague answer, noting that in his line of work, there are no guarantees for the future. That night, Roland shared a bath with Mary and Layla, who shifted into her human form. The two girls bickered over who would wash his back, eventually leading to a chaotic splash fight in the tub. Afterward, Roland tucked Mary into bed. Once she fell asleep, he met with Dee in his room. Dee presented a letter she had recovered from the poacher Bale. The letter, written in ink visible only under moonlight, revealed a conspiracy between the Welger merchant group and Count Barbatus Gur of the Ferindo Kingdom. The documents detailed plans for a rebellion, including funding, expanding military forces, and destabilizing Ferindo. Roland realized that if left unchecked, a civil war would break out in the neighboring kingdom. Seeking more info on the Count, Roland visited Rabbi's room. He found her in the bath, and after a chaotic encounter involving Dee teasing the girl about her small stature, Roland got down to business. Rabbi explained that the Count had been recruiting hundreds of stray mages under the guise of high-paying jobs, but those who failed missions mysteriously disappeared. Roland realized the Count was building a private army of mages. He also suspected that his former mentor, the assassin Amy, was the one behind the Count's elite security and the intel on Roland's true identity. To stop the coup, Roland decided to infiltrate the Count's territory in the Ferindo Kingdom. He took a month's leave from the guild and traveled to the town of Sandor. Using the alias Henry Everton, he applied for the Count's private army. During the interview, the local knights mocked him for being a medic who used daggers. Roland silenced them by instantly disarming both knights and holding their own swords to their throats before they could even blink. Terrified, they realized he was no ordinary soldier and immediately passed him. Roland was sent to a training field with 100 other recruits. The instructor, a brutal man named Daz, began training the recruits by beating them senseless with the sheaths of his dual sword. When Daz prepared to strike a downed recruit in the head, Roland intervened, stopping the blow with one finger. Daz attacked Roland with his dual blade style, but Roland easily dodged, mocking the weakness of the style. When Daz drew his real steel in a rage, Roland moved with invisible speed, breaking Daz's jaw, arms, and legs with a wooden practice sword. The other recruits and instructors watched in horror as the strongest soldier in the town was neutralized in a split second. After the fight with Daz, the other instructors took Roland to a local tavern. They were curious about his background, but he kept it simple, calling himself a traveling martial artist. As the drinks flowed, the instructors revealed that the Lord had been aggressively recruiting soldiers, reaching a force of over 3,000 men. They assumed it was for monster hunting, unaware of the Lord's plan for a rebellion. Roland shared a half-true story about training in the mountains to gain their trust, and by the end of the night, the instructors were so impressed by his humble and stoic attitude that they begged him to take over training the troops. Roland agreed, remembering his own days of training the hero party. By the second day, Roland was officially appointed as a special platoon leader. The soldiers, who had heard rumors of him taking down Daz, were intimidated but motivated. Roland gave a harsh speech, promising them they would become stronger than ever if they survived his training. He spent the next month pushing them to their limits, leading them through mountain runs and hand-to-hand combat drills. Unlike the lazy recruits he expected, these men were eager to improve, and Roland soon found himself respected and even loved by his subordinates. One day, the mid-level commander called a meeting to discuss a recurring mission, transporting food supplies to a nearby warehouse. Roland grew suspicious when he learned the supplies were mostly long-lasting items like dried meat. He visited the warehouse and discovered that the crates labeled as food were actually packed with swords, spears, and bows. It was clear the Lord was stockpiling weapons for a coup. While investigating, Roland caught a spy hiding in the shadows. The man revealed he was working for King Randolph, who had also sensed something was wrong. Roland told the spy to stay out of the way and let him handle it. Roland took a quick trip back to the Badenhart kingdom to prepare his countermove. By the time he returned, he had won over nearly a third of the Lord's army through his training sessions. He gathered 30 of his loyal platoon leaders and revealed the truth about Lord Barbadus's plan for civil war. Disgusted by the idea of more senseless fighting, the soldiers immediately pledged their loyalty to Roland instead of the Lord. Roland explained his plan. They weren't going to fight a war. They were going to make it impossible for the Lord to start one by stealing all his supplies. Roland summoned Layla and Roch to help. Layla used her massive magic circles to create gates near the warehouses, allowing Roland's loyal soldiers to move the stockpiled weapons and food directly to the Badenhart kingdom. As the supplies vanished into thin air, Roland brought in Rabbi to use her force field skill to protect the workers and the magic circle. Lord Barbadus soon noticed the magic particles rising from his warehouses and rushed to the scene with 30 mages. He was furious to see his soldiers moving his supplies and demanded they stop. When he saw Rabbi, he mocked her for being a failure, but Roland stepped in to defend her. He showed the Lord the incriminating letter he had intercepted, proving the Lord's treason. Barbadus ordered his mages to attack, but Roland's sheer presence and killing intent were so overwhelming that the Lord's elite guards realized they stood no chance. The guards abandoned the Lord on the spot, choosing to survive rather than die for a losing cause. Roland neutralized the remaining mages and captured Barbadus. He revealed his true identity as the man who had destroyed the illegal arena, much to the Lord's horror. Roland then used a gate to jump directly to the royal capital and presented the traitorous noble to King Randolph. In the throne room, Barbadus tried to blame the king's strictness for his rebellion and even insulted the king's authority. Roland lost his temper, punched the Lord across the room, and pinned him to the wall, warning him never to insult his friend again. King Randolph ordered Barbadus to be thrown into the dungeon. A month later, the corrupt noble was publicly executed, and his family's title and lands were seized. The news of the failed coup spread across the kingdom, and Roland once again returned to the shadows, having saved the peace of the realm without a single drop of innocent blood being spilled. After Lord Barbados was thrown into the dungeon, Roland visited King Randolph in his private room. The king looked tired, admitting that the Lord's insults about him hiding behind Princess Almeria's fame hit close to home. Roland, blunt as ever, advised the king that if he wanted to prevent future revenge, he should consider wiping out the Lord's entire lineage. However, Randolph refused, saying he would take responsibility for his own actions even if a seeker of revenge appeared one day. While looking at intercepted letters, they noticed a plan called the Fall of Felindo. Roland realized that Barbatos's ultimate move wasn't just a rebellion, but the assassination of Almeria. The king was skeptical that anyone besides Roland could pull that off, but Roland dropped a bombshell. His own master and former mentor, Amy, was likely involved. Roland explained that Almeria is a monster against armies, but she lacks experience in one-on-one fights against professional killers. He warned the king that Almeria needed to change her daily routine constantly to avoid being targeted. Roland headed back to the capital of Wardenhark, where Layla, the Demon King, was laughing about the chaos. The massive stockpile of food Roland had gifted from the corrupt lord was being distributed to the hungry citizen. While the food was a temporary fix, Layla revealed she had secretly brought seeds from the demon realm that could grow in any soil, ensuring the country's food security for 100 years. She acted tough about it, but Roland knew it was her way of making up for the damage the Demon King's army had caused in the past. Later, Roland reflected on his early days as a guild clerk. His co-worker Milia had told him he had Tuesday and Friday off. Roland, having never had a day off in his life, thought he was being fired because he was useless. He even misunderstood the concept of sleeping in, thinking it was some kind of dangerous drug since Milia spoke about it with such passion. After some awkward explanation, Roland and Layla learned another lesson about living a normal life. Sometimes you get paid even when you aren't working. Back in the present, the Adventurer Guild in Wardenhark was finally running smoothly. Most of the staff from the royal capital had returned home, leaving only Roland, Milia, and Iris. Roland spent his days mentoring new clerks and helping Milia, who was still a bit airheaded despite being called teacher by the rookies. Roland's mind stayed on the threat to Almeria. He visited the palace and found her complaining to Frank, the captain of the royal guard, about having too many bodyguards. Roland interrupted and proposed a better plan, Almeria should become an adventurer. By taking different quests every day under Roland's supervision, her movements would become unpredictable to assassin. The king agreed, trusting Roland more than his own security. Roland used his gate magic to instantly transport Almeria to Wardenhark. While waiting for Frank and his knights to arrive by horse, Roland took Almeria to a training ground. He realized she had gotten soft and slightly out of shape during the peacetime. Almeria, trying to turn the training into a date, made a deal. If she could touch him during their spar, he had to take her on a normal date. They trained until dawn, leaving Almeria exhausted and unable to even stand. Realizing the gap between her and a true master like Roland was still massive. The next day, Roland introduced Almeria to the local group, including Princess Maylie and Layla in her black cat form. Maylie was starstruck by the legendary hero, while Layla and Almeria chatted like old friends. Roland tasked the group with looking after Almeria during the day while he handled guild business. Roland then met with his scouts Dee and Rabbi, who had been investigating the Welger commerce firm. They reported that after losing Barbados, the firm was getting desperate and messy, hiring thugs and engaging in illegal trade. Roland decided that if the situation didn't improve, he would have to step into the underground guild and personally remove the rot before it spread further through the kingdom. Roland noticed something was off immediately. He had been staying near Princess Almeria to protect her from assassins, but his shadow scouts suddenly vanished. He realized he was being lured away, isolated from his ally. He suspected he had been sold out by Moise, his contact in the underground guild, but instead of retreating, Roland decided to face the threat head-on. Near the castle, he encountered Almeria, who had sensed danger using her instinct. However, Roland told her to go back to the castle, claiming he would handle the assassin alone. Almeria realized it was an imposter because the real Roland would never act so cocky or drop his guard. She dodged an attack just as the imposter's disguise melted away, revealing a beautiful woman with wavy black hair and golden eyes. This was Amy, Roland's former mentor. She had been watching Almeria for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Amy possessed a terrifying skill called copy, which allowed her to steal and use the abilities of others. She had taken Roland in as an orphan just to monitor his skills, eventually discarding him when she deemed his shadow skill useless. The fight began with Almeria struggling against Amy's overwhelming speed. Almeria used her returner skill to rewind time on her own body, healing wounds instantly, but Amy quickly saw through it. Amy even used Almeria's own defensive magic against her. Just as Amy moved in for the kill, the real Roland appeared from the shadows, stabbing her from behind. However, Amy survived by using a defensive skill she had stolen from a knight Roland once knew. Roland realized that to protect Almeria, he had to end this now. He faced his old teacher, the woman who had trained him through brutal, year-round sessions in the mountain. Amy mocked him, saying he had grown soft by wanting a normal life as a guild clerk. The battle became a high-speed clash of skills. Amy used powerful lightning attacks and absolute defenses she had copied from others. Roland relied entirely on his useless shadow skill, which he had refined to perfection. During the final exchange, Amy used a hidden blade to slice off Roland's right arm. Despite losing his arm, Roland didn't stop. He used the momentum of his fall to get behind her. He knew the weakness of the magic shield she was using. It was brittle from the back. Channeling all his magic into his remaining left arm, Roland shattered her defense and struck her. In that moment, he realized he had used the very first assassination move Amy had ever taught him as a child. Layla rushed to a slum far from the castle, where her subordinate Roger reported that Roland and an assassin were both down. They found Roland exhausted and bleeding heavily, having lost his right arm in the battle. Despite his injuries, Roland tried to force himself up to finish off Amy, his former mentor. He felt bound by a dark promise to be the one to end her life, but Layla stopped him. She hugged him tightly, crying, and told him he didn't need to kill anymore because he was a guild clerk now, not an assassin. Roland finally let go of his past and lost consciousness in her arm. Layla used her high-level healing magic to stabilize Roland and Amy. During the emotional moment, the magic collar Roland had given her, which suppressed her powers, shattered, restoring her full strength as the Demon King. To avoid a panic among humans, Layla teleported everyone to a secluded island. She decided to save Amy's life as well, recognizing her as someone important to Roland's past. 2 days later, Roland woke up to find Layla nursing him. He realized his right arm was truly gone, but felt a strange sense of peace, having finally broken free from the curse of Amy's teachings. Layla explained that her collar broke because it couldn't contain her power forever, but she chose to stay with him rather than return to the demon realm. She had even preserved his severed arm in magic, though she jokingly posed it into a peace sign, making Roland realize she was regaining her playful spirit. Roland eventually returned to his home in Lahadi. His co-workers at the guild, including Milia and Iris, welcomed him back with a surprise celebration and flowers. Even with one arm, Roland found he could still handle his paperwork. He felt a deep sense of belonging, realizing he finally had a place to call home. Meanwhile, Roland arranged for the young girl Rabbi to start training with the veteran adventurers Neil and Roger. Although Rabbi was reluctant because the duo was loud and unrefined, Roland knew they were good people who could teach her the field experience she needed to survive. Back at home, the group discussed fixing Layla's broken collar. Layla wanted it back not just to hide her power, but as a symbol that she was no longer the Demon King. Dee, who was revealed to be from a vampire bloodline, identified the collar as ancient vampire magic. Since Layla's presence would scare off other vampires, Roland sent Roger and Dee together to find someone who could repair it. Layla admitted to Roland that she was happier living a simple life with him than she ever was as a ruler. The next day at the guild, Roland watched as the veteran duo Neil and Roger argued with the rookie Rabbi. Neil wanted to take on a simple D-rank quest for their first job together, but Rabbi, still overconfident from her time as a mage under Lord Barbardos, insisted they were ready for C-rank. Roland stepped in, realizing that while Rabbi had the raw power, she lacked the humility and teamwork needed for real adventuring. To teach her a lesson, Roland didn't settle for C-rank. He pulled out a B-rank quest, an assignment even veterans struggle with. When Rabbi got scared, Roland hit her with some harsh truth, calling her a useless E-rank brat who was still acting like a spoiled princess. He told her if she didn't like it, she could leave and try to survive on her own. Rabbi was reduced to tears but agreed to the job. Milia, watching from the side, realized Roland was being cruelly kind. He was intentionally acting as a common enemy to force the three of them to bond and rely on each other. By early afternoon, the trio returned unscathed. The plan worked perfectly. Neil and Roger were impressed by Rabbi's unique support skills, and Rabbi had learned to respect the veteran's experience. She even thanked Roland for snapping her out of her ego, realizing he had done it for her own good. Late that night, Dee and Roger returned from their mission to find someone to fix Layla's magic collar. They had traveled to Arzel, a hidden underground city of vampires in the demon realm. They discovered the collar was created by a famous but eccentric vampire named Warwick Save. Warwick was an anti-royalist genius who specialized in creating tools that messed with pure-blood magic. However, he had been missing for years. Layla remembered his name, but noted he had refused to help the Demon King's army in the past. With no one else able to understand the collar's complex logic, Roland decided to contact Seraphine, the priestess from the hero's party, to see if she had any leads since she originally found the item. A few days later, a loud commotion broke out at the guild. A C-rank adventurer was screaming at Milia because his party had been mangled by an irregular high-level monster during a routine D-rank quest. He wanted compensation, blaming Milia's guidance. Roland stepped in and shut the man down. He pointed out that the leader had brought two low-level E-rank rookies into a dangerous zone just to save money. Roland told him straight up, "You were arrogant and your friend's injuries are the tuition fee for your stupidity." The adventurer, stunned by Roland's cold logic and intimidating presence, backed down and apologized, realizing they were lucky to be alive. While clearing through paperwork, Roland and Milia noticed a surge in reports about strange, unidentified monsters in a nearby forest used by woodcutters. Roland went to investigate at dusk. He encountered a massive creature the size of a house, a shield turtle covered in rock-like armor with 4 needle-thin eyes. Roland easily blinded the beast with a stone and finished it off by piercing its soft joints with a branch infused with magic. Upon closer inspection, he found a string of magical symbols etched into its skin, the exact same script found on Layla's collar. Roland returned home to consult Layla, but Layla recognized him instantly. Warwick Save. Warwick wasn't interested in fighting. He was a researcher who lived for his experiment. Roland showed him Layla's broken collar and asked if he could fix it. Warwick admitted he had sold that specific prototype years ago. He explained that the collar was designed to suppress magic, and even transform the wearer into a cat as a useless side feature he was into at the time. He offered to make a new one, but warned it would take 3 months. Warwick then turned his attention to Roland's missing arm. He offered to create a superior, new right arm for Roland, claiming it was a waste for someone who defeated the Demon King to remain disabled. Roland politely declined, saying one arm was enough for his life as a clerk. Warwick didn't push it but explained his research. He used magic scripts to force monsters to evolve and grow instantly. Roland warned him to stop letting his experiments wander into the forest and scare the local. Warwick agreed, not wanting his projects to be hunted by adventurers. Returning to the guild in Lahadi, Roland reported the situation to branch manager Iris, explaining that the monsters were just a researcher's pets. Iris was impressed by Roland's efficiency. She noticed he looked more relaxed now that the tension from his battle with Amy had faded. She invited him to a dinner with the staff who had returned from the capital, and Roland, feeling more social, accepted. Later, Roland visited the orphanage. Almeria was there, busy taking care of a growing number of children. She was still feeling guilty about Roland's arm, but he told her not to worry, joking that he could still beat her in a fight. He also met young Lena, who expressed a desire to teach magic to the other children. Roland encouraged her, realizing that teaching others was a great way to grow oneself. Back at his house, Milia was hanging out with Layla. When Roland arrived, Milia teased Layla about being too clingy. They all headed to the guild for the staff party, though Layla was annoyed she had to stay home since she didn't officially work there. A few days later, Roland found himself being interviewed by Milia for the guild's newsletter. Despite his simple and blunt answers, the newsletter became a massive hit. Women from all over town rushed to get a copy just to read about Roland's daily routine. Layla even secretly kept a copy for herself, claiming she just wanted it for scrap paper. The piece was interrupted when Toro, the guild master from the capital, arrived in Lahadi. He begged Roland to travel to the royal capital to act as an instructor for a training seminar. Roland repeatedly refused, wanting to stay away from the spotlight. Toro even tried to get Iris to order him, which led to a loud argument. Eventually, Roland agreed after Toro pulled him aside and revealed that the seminar was a cover to investigate corruption and darkness within the Adventurer Association itself. Toro also promised to give Roland a villa as a reward, hoping it would make Layla happy. Roland traveled to the royal capital with Layla's shadow familiar following him. At the seminar, he felt uncharacteristically nervous about speaking in front of a crowd. Layla teased him, finding it funny that a legendary assassin was scared of public speaking. During the lecture, Roland challenged the traditional magic power standards for adventurers. He argued that raw numbers don't matter as much as personality, effort, and unique skills. This upset a few veteran instructors. One arrogant man mocked Roland, calling him a weakling with one arm and telling him to stop talking trash. Instantly, Layla's shadow released a terrifying pressure that froze everyone in the room. Roland used his shadow movement to appear behind the man in a split second, pressing his thumb against the man's throat. He calmly told the man that while he might be weak, he could still crush his throat before anyone could blink. The bully, terrified and trembling, immediately apologized. Roland stepped back and told the class to continue, having firmly established his authority. After the training seminar, Roland and Layla, in her shadow form, hit a local tavern. Layla was still fuming about the instructor who insulted Roland's missing arm, but Roland didn't care. He explained that being underestimated is actually a tactical advantage. If an enemy thinks he's weak because he has one arm, they'll drop their guard and die before they realize their mistake.